Hey guys, Tarke here, and welcome to our first Baeclast of Lake of Kalandra, and special welcome to our new co-hosts, CaptainLance and Grimro. Grimro, what did you think of the Lake of Kalandra news?
Oh yeah, it was pretty incredible. Apart from the part where we got a switcheroo on the Divine and Exalted Orb and Standard went into Meltdown, everything else was pretty exciting.
Highly entertaining.
Yep,
Tell you what, the standard economy has never been more alive.
that's true. Very, very alive.
So, I haven't looked at the standard economy at all. Could you just give me a brief summary of how messed up everyone's ratios are now?
Oh well, like the Exalted Orb went, straight down, and the Divine Orb went, straight up. Like thousands of percent up, and everyone was a little bit unhappy about that change.
How much is a divine and
best I
standard now?
saw, the divines went from like 8 chaos to 110 chaos when I looked, and the split between buy and sell was 110 and 50 chaos. That's such a wide split on buy and sell prices, just because like everyone's freaking out. That was like a couple hours after the announcement.
Okay.
Definitely a bit of a chaos going on, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
All right, so we'll circle back around to that. Lance, what was your initial reaction to the 319 news?
I'm freaking stoked. I love it whenever we get mechanics that involve basically some way we can craft or make stronger items. And I've been over analyzing the freaking mechanic for putting an item in and having it reflect the values. And I keep coming back with the same conclusion, which it's going to be a 1 in 4 to get the result you want. When I'm looking at it, because you always get 3 negative, 3 positive if you put a 6 mod item in. Because it's reflected, if they made it so you could get 4 positive or 4 negative or whatever, the reflected one would be 4 positive, which I think balance-wise would be too busted, so I don't think they're going to allow that. That's why I think it's always going to be 3 and 3, and everything that they showcased was 3 and 3. And so the reason I think it's a 1 in 4 is, say you have 3 mods you care about getting basically modified. You pick one of those mods, guaranteed there will be a positive version and a negative version on one of the items, and then you're rolling it basically a 50-50 for the other 2 mods twice. So say you have life plus 1 spell and maybe chaos res, and those are the mods you care about. So you have life guaranteed, you roll a 50-50 on the plus 1, that's your 1 and 2, and then you roll a 50-50 on the chaos res.
Okay.
So I could be completely wrong, but I'm 99% sure it's a 1 in 4. You get the good outcome if you're picking 3 mods to roll positive type of situation.
Yeah, this is a bit interesting because when I was looking at it, I actually did, or someone correct me if I'm wrong, spot an item with 5 modifiers, 3 of which were negative and 2 were positive, I believe.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's an angle that you can go for, get 3 positive and 2 negative. That would be kind of better, right?
You might be able to get 3 positive and 2 negative. All the examples I saw with 5 mods were 3 negative, 2 positive. So maybe they weighted it to give 3 negatives over 2 positives. So I think you always want to do a 6 mod item. But you just make sure the 3 mods you don't care about, you pick mods that you know aren't going to be bad for your build. It shouldn't be hard to craft a 3 mod item that's 3 good mods and trash mods, like life gain on kill, really bad flat recovery, freaking reduced crit if you're not a crit build, or you pick something you know you can overcome that's worthless to you, and you're just rolling for 3 mod items.
Hang on a second. If you have negative life gain on kill and you kill a pack of 50 monsters, won't it one-shot you?
It's not that high of a roll. It goes to 5 life gain on kill. So you're going to have negative 10 life gain on kill.
Well, sounds like you're not killing enough monsters, Lance. You're just not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
You just get a little bit of counter life recovery and you sustain that. I'm pretty sure. Okay, CI, yeah, you die if you're CI. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Don't.
Can you still get life gain on hit? Because on spells and that, can you get negative life gain on hit with spells and stuff? And
Yeah, that would maybe be a bit sketchy.
We can't put influenced items into it, can we?
No.
Yeah,
you can't.
I think one thing which go on, Grim.
I was just gonna say, Captain Lance is thinking of his 6 mod items, but I was just looking at 1 mod item, and if you put any 1 mod in, you're basically guaranteed to get a +2 amulet from every time you try. So that's pretty good. +2 amulet is really solid just for
super early, nice value probably.
Yeah, definitely.
Gotta put some other affixes on there and have a shot though, right? Ugh, such a waste of all this.
Come on.
Oh, I just had an idea. What about minus mana cost? Positive mana cost. Archmage builds coming back.
Yeah.
Increased mana cost rings.
That unironically would help out the Stormbind build because it lost its flat mana cost. Sorry, this is stupid. Stormbind's like completely potato. Never mind, don't worry about it.
One thing I was going to say, depending on how, because we don't know how rare it's going to be that you get to do those crafting things, so this might be like the worst advice ever, but assuming they are relatively common, one thing I might do in SSF is, you often just like stockpile those random rings that are like 50 life, 50 mana, like maybe an ES roll and some res. Those seem like really easy things to throw in there because it's like if you're an ES build, you don't care if it like hits the life. A lot of builds don't care if they lose like some mana this, that way, and the other. So depending on how common it is, it might be like a really easy way of getting like a 150 life positive res ring or something like that. But it's interesting how they've purposely like not really spoke about the crafting at all. So I am curious how simple or complex it really is going to be.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if
Q&A.
Yeah, I asked Chris a bit about it and everything, and the only thing I didn't ask was if it splits 50-50, where there's always 3 and 3, which is being debated a little bit. It seems likely, but yeah.
Otherwise, we're getting one of the items is going to have 4 positive mods.
Yeah.
Well, one thing which I found particularly interesting is I initially was like, oh, okay, a normal ring, like how good can that be? Because Chris specifically said double the stats. But then I was looking at the actual items and
It's
like stuff like it's more than double, yeah. And then I went back to Ziggy's Q&A and he said specifically multiple times and stressed the fact that the actual amplification of the modifiers is actually affected by the difficulty of the encounter. Which makes it pretty interesting. And he said it scales like Delirium, which is also pretty interesting. So I think if you like really like juice up the rewards and put the Kalandra stuff at the end, you could get some pretty insane items. Because if it's 150% better, then those 3 mods are like better than a normal 6 mod ring, and you get to cherry pick the best ones for your build. So
yeah, it's way better too.
So we're thinking the longer the chain is, basically the stronger the mirror is.
Correct.
And do we know how regularly we even get to encounter? Is it like a 1 in 100 or like 1 in 10 or every time you do a long chain, or?
The mirrored thing, it's actually a specific reward tile, it seems.
Okay.
We were shown the icon once in the trailer.
Just hope they don't do Abyss boss rarity or Delve boss rarity or rarity of the rare encounter on the league book mechanic that no one ends up finding until the next league when it's a standard mechanic or whatever.
I mean, oh, you go ahead, Ziggy.
I was gonna say, I like how Tarke was like, what was your general opinion on the reveal stream? And we'll like dive into a deep
Hang on, Ziggy, have you watched Baeclast before?
Topic list order of discussion.
That was actually one thing which was really funny. I wrote up a very brief kind of like bullet point topic list, and both Grim and Lance are like, Tarke, you've missed so much stuff. It's like, you guys are clearly new. You haven't done this very much, have you? This idea of having everything locked in stone. But yeah, sorry, go on.
Even if it's on the list, we just bring up, or not on the list, we just bring it up anyways, right?
Like I never put Battle Brothers on the topic list, but it always finds its way in there.
Oh God, here we go. I think this system will work reasonably well for like scalability for different like player levels as well. Like it's always something to think about with crafting. Is like, oh, is this only for like, you look at like synthesis crafting, it's like only the most dedicated nerds are going to touch that crafting. But I think this hits reasonably well for the average player as well, because like if you're trying to make like a pretty simple, straightforward ring, like let's say you're playing Righteous Fire or something, you just want to get like high life and strength, and you've got some resists on there. You hit negatives on the resists, you hit double giga life ring, you got like 150 life ring or something there with like 100 strength or whatever. You've got a great ring for Righteous Fire with a bit of a downside that you can just build around. You can offset it on another piece of gear that has a bit more resist than you need or something like that. Or maybe you're running purity anyway, so it's not a big deal. So like in some cases, these downsides, are just going to hit resists that aren't a big deal, and the upsides are going to be very straightforward and easy. So yeah, I think that works well for everyone.
I completely agree. Speaking a little bit more on the high end of things as well, because I feel like a few people are like, it's okay, but that's like whatever. But people aren't some people aren't considering that you can actually craft a ring with an essence, like critical strike multiplier, or like fizzes extra fire, and then stick it in the blender, and you could be getting like 40 or 50% fizzes extra fire, or something. Like, I mean, maybe that's a little bit much, but something crazy, which is pretty cool. And there's
Maybe.
also the delve mods, and you can get like plus zombies and skeletons and stuff.
Yep.
So it's like, I don't know, maybe pretty good.
Another thing about that is I like went through and like looked the example they showed where they stuck an amulet in there, and it basically was like a +2 dot multi amulet. That amulet, every single mod was multiplied by a factor of 1.2. So it's consistent on however the difficulty encounter is. Every single mod is multiplied by the same number. Because if you go through and you do the math on it, it's all 1.2, or not 1.2, 2.2. Sorry, an extra 20% on top of doubling the mods. Sorry, I said the wrong number, but you get the point. So however much we can scale that to, if it is 2.5 or 3 even, you're looking at the value of a 6 mod to 9 mod item with the fact the thing you're multiplying are good mods. Like if you get crit multi, you're talking 50 crit multi to 75 crit multi sort of thing. And like, 200 life. Like that way outweighs basically your 4th, 5th, and 6th mod choice that you'd have, I think.
It's also kind of interesting thinking about how you might maybe this league want to play builds that scale harder on those slots, like wedge stacking jewelry or stuff like that, rather than something which doesn't scale that well with it, which I think is kind of neat.
Yeah, definitely has a lot of value.
Yeah. So
agree, yeah.
We spent quite a lot of time talking about the crafting aspect, but what do we think of the sort of league mechanic itself, the whole like running around through the lakes? What about you, Ziggy?
It looks like synthesis without the hassle of organizing the bits and everything like that. So I was stoked as soon as I saw it. I was like, oh yeah, cool. They fixed synthesis. It's good. I loved synthesis. I loved the thing, but yeah, that was like pretty annoying managing the pieces to build your maps with. But this time you don't have to do that. They're just presented to you as a list of options, and you can fiddle with it as you clear zones. So shouldn't take too much time out of whatever you're doing in the instance as well, which is good. I am like mildly concerned about backtracking. I think that ideally you want to make the path so that it's only one way, but there's going to be situations where that's not going to happen from looking at all the different preview pictures they've given us.
Yeah.
Unless you score like 5 tile swaps or something like that, you're just not going to be able to avoid backtracking in some of them. So, I mean, you can always put like stuff you don't care about down one path and then fill up the other path with the stuff you do care about, and just don't worry about it. Skip it. Skip the backtrack wings potentially, but if there's good stuff there, a bit of backtracking. But yeah, other than that, it looks pretty sweet.
I also like
that.
That
Pretty too.
What was that? Sorry.
Looks so cool.
So again, Lance, sorry.
The fact the mechanic isn't timed.
Yeah.
Like compared to synthesis, it was like a race against the clock, and you could get bug zones. Which I think that was a super feels bad moment when it's like your zone just kind of bugged and then you lost your entire like wing basically. Whereas this is not timed. You can make a build that's slow and tanky, or you can make a build that zooms through it and you can still enjoy it no matter what. I'm pretty pumped about that because I don't necessarily always want to build this fastest character possible.
I saw a comment in chat that says the juice looks very low compared to maps, and I actually see that as a big upside for me personally. I'm excited about a league that's not as about the juice stacking on your maps. So like if you take a league mechanic and put it in the maps and then it interacts with all the various other shit you're throwing on the maps, right? You get more and more into Path of Exile's current problematic gameplay of screen spam and everything like that. And obviously the Archnemesis changes, reduction of rares and stuff like that are going somewhat towards addressing this, but actually league mechanics that are separate. So you can have these like gauntlet of encounters that are tuned around having a reasonable number of monsters, and you can actually see things on the screen. Now, I'm sure there'll still be exceptions because it's still using mechanics like Delirium and Breach and stuff like that in there. So we're still going to see a bit of regular PoE gameplay, but hopefully it's indicative of the fact that some of these are going to be, nice encounters, like, little tailored experiences, fun, challenging, rewarding things that don't require a billion projectiles flying everywhere and ground effects.
That segues quite nicely into points, so we'll circle back around to what me and Grim think about it. But Grim, I've seen the sentiment circled quite a lot recently, and you'll have the best experience with this. It feels like Path of Exile is becoming much more of an Alcan Go game, and there's like a lot of things where like if you're crazy investing, like the time to currency isn't really worth it. Would you agree or disagree with that? And does this league seem like even more of a push in that direction of just Alk and Go gaming?
So yeah, I'd say ever since Ritual League, like we started going towards the Alk and Go kind of play style, and it really hit its peak when they introduced Eldritch Altars. And then, of course, now we've got stuff like Stream of Consciousness, where you literally get league mechanics for free almost every map. So, yeah, Lake of Kalandra is just more in that direction. It synergizes the best with all of the like low investment strategies out there, and it's just going to make it, even better to do that kind of style of thing. So, yeah, basically, the answer to your question, absolutely yes.
And as someone who is usually on the more extreme end of the crazy investment, how do you feel about that?
Oh, actually, like I think I've been kind of like mislabeled here a little bit. I never really liked the
Okay.
maximum juice. Go out and buy like 5,000 materials and go in there. It's like looting the map for 10 minutes wasn't exactly my idea of the most fun. So I actually much prefer this style of gameplay personally.
Okay.
Are you trying to say that you don't like to trade for an hour before playing the game?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Lance. I wasn't a big
Well,
fan
that's
of
a
that one.
controversial opinion.
Mm.
Yeah,
So with
that's
that
pretty
in
good.
mind, then, yeah, what do you think of the actual gameplay aspect of Lake of Kalandra, Grim?
Okay, so early game, I think this is going to be a really, really good mechanic. You're going to get a ton of jewelry, which could be really useful for your build early on, and it's going to be fun to kind of pick and choose which one, which is super duper sweet. And also the generic rewards, like historically, generic rewards are always the best rewards on League Start. You get a ton of rares, you can do your chaos recipe with it, you get a ton of currency. It's like just a really good time. And I think overall, people are going to have and think it's really rewarding. It kind of reminds me of Ultimatum in that way. The question is how it's going to perform in the end game for me, because as Ziggy correctly pointed out, the juice levels do look to be low. It doesn't stack on top of other league mechanics. It's kind of its own separate thing. But there's a lot of mysteries and like factors which we'll go into if it's going to perform in the end game. And regardless of everything, I can say pretty much without a shadow of doubt, the new bases as well as the ability to do the mirror like on the item of your choice will have value without like anything else.
I think my favorite thing about it, just looking at it, is it avoids the harvest problem, because that was one thing I was initially worried about with like, oh, what happens if I get a really good lake but I then don't have a good amulet? But we can itemize these and run them later, so that's quite cool. The fact that if you do hit like day 1, day 2 of the league, like duplicate thing, you can be like, well, I don't need to force a bad thing in there. You can hold on to it, wait till you get like a +1 amulet or something, then go for something bigger later on, which I think is quite fun.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the bases specifically, like people are underestimating those ones. I think like increased duration is no joke. Some of
Yeah,
the
that's very
best
exciting.
skills,
Yeah.
Blade Vortex and Winter Orb, the main issue with them is duration. Just saying. But yeah, I'd say the biggest issue and the biggest thing that will hinge on is, can you stack multiple of a single league mechanic tile on a singular lake? Can I have 5 harvests? Yes or no?
What's the longest lake we've seen?
16 tiles.
Well, then
Land
surely
tiles.
we must be able to stack league mechanics. Are there 16 different league mechanics?
But there's also other tiles, right? Like chaos monsters, warbands, and stuff
True.
like that.
Yeah, and they're gonna be duplicates, right? Or no?
I feel like there must be duplicates, surely.
You can do duplicates of like cold monsters, but like think of a world in which a harvest is worth 10 chaos, right? Like on a sextant, right? That's kind of like what the value is, like roughly, right? And then imagine you're getting them for free every single map by just like refreshing and placing the tiles correctly. Like if you get like 5 of them on a single one, maybe that's a little too crazy. I don't know, but we'll see.
Well, I suppose with that, let's talk harvest. What do we think of the harvest rework?
I guess I'll start. Harvest rework. I'm pretty sure power wise for like good players, SSF hardcore boys, it's significantly less. But for everyone else who didn't have 100 bases prepped in their stash ready to go, it's nothing but positive, because you get to pick the mods you want to craft, so it's relevant to what you're crafting, and you don't have to stop in the middle of the map. You just run it, you collect juice, that number just goes up and up and up, and then eventually you decide, I'm going to craft. You go in and you have you go get the item you're going to craft with, the base you found that you were going to use it on, and you can just focus on that. And it takes away the whole you're stopping your gameplay to switch your mindset to do harvest the best, most optimal way. So I think for the majority, I feel like it's just like fantastic change, minus the power level for people who are good at harvest.
Do you agree with that, Grim? I see you said like you want to.
Me? I was giving everyone else a chance to talk because I just talked for ages. So I was like, I'll you know.
Okay.
But if you want my opinion, I think it's the best change since the league was introduced. I think I didn't like Harvest at all in its current state. I actually blocked it as soon as the new needs came out,
Yeah.
and I haven't run it since. Because it's just no fun to go out and buy tons of bases and roll them and like look up a spreadsheet on all the clusters I need to roll. It's not very fun for me. Yeah. Also interacting with the actual using of the crafts. Like if I want to craft a really cool item, going to like, the Discord servers, giving my item to someone, it's like, oh, no, thank you. So it's just improvements across the board for me. And I'm actually excited to sit down and try and craft something on the spot. It's going to be cool.
What about you, Ziggy?
I love and want more deterministic crafting in PoE. So seeing the decline of Harvest over the leagues as GGG repeatedly, kicked it, made it worse and worse and worse from its, initial both league and the period just after, where it was kind of like a golden age for people crafting and growing their gear with them and stuff like that. It was good times. I don't really think we're like getting back. We're not going to be annulling or exalting things still, surely. Like I think they're probably just going to make it just as rare, if not more rare. Now that like it's easy to trade, because they can balance it around it being like this rare crystallized life force or whatever like that, and the costs of that to do exalts and nulls and stuff. And that's if they haven't even have they removed divine ability from Harvest as well to go along with the divine changes.
I mean, almost definitely.
We'll see.
It's gone for sure.
Probably, right? Probably. So I don't think we'll be like getting that power level back or anything, but I also hard blocked Harvest and I will now unblock Harvest and give it another try. So as far as like changes go, this is a fantastic change, the best change they could do to Harvest, I think, outside of, within the context of them not wanting to make it powerful deterministic crafting. But the thing that, holds me in the silver lining for me is that they seem really keen on experimenting with crafting in new leagues, and they've been doing it repeatedly. So I'm not as bothered as I was by Harvest in the past for that reason, because, we're getting this cool mirroring crafting thing this time around, and we had recombinators and we had the corrupted crafting, and we're getting some of that back. So I really like seeing a lot of that stuff. So it's good stuff. Also, the monster patches look a lot better too, because that was the other half of the equation for me of like it being super annoying, was both like the crafting in your maps and it taking an hour, but also every time you click a patch and the monsters barrage you with 80 projectiles instantly and jump on you with their 5 stacked haste auras and whatnot. So it looked a lot better in the footage.
I think I'm keeping Harvest blocked. I think Harvest is going to be bait. So I agree entirely with the monster thing. For me, it's the little burrow dudes. Those do my head into no end. It's just there's always like one which gets underground and hides, and you like mess around for it. The thing which worries me about it is until we see like a full list of what all the Harvest crafts are, there's that whole thing of like, do we still have the powerful crafts? And then Life Force is tradable, right? That's like the whole thing now.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's going to be balanced around the fact that Trade League players will be able to like mass buy it. So I feel like it's going to probably have quite a high like entry cost. So from an SSF point of view, I kind of feel like it's going to be a situation of I could very much see a scenario where it's like, oh, I want to like change fire res to lightning res or something. And then it's like, I now need to run like 20 harvests to get enough life force to get one attempt. Or it really depends on until I see like that full list and where the balancing is and how much life force we're getting. And the fact that Harvest is just annoying to run.
Despite me talking about how much it's like not going to be very powerful, I disagree with you on it being bait though, because like the chaos spamming is actually really good. It was just so annoying to do.
Okay,
before, and I think this does make it a lot better.
Maybe what I should rephrase that is I can see a world where like you just don't block Harvest on your Atlas tree. But I think the opportunity cost of like investing fully into Harvest is what I kind of think is bait. Like I feel like if you compared that to doing like a full Essence investment and how much gear crafting power that's going to give you in a league start, I think I would much sooner do that. And I know you could be like, oh, just do full Essence and full Harvest, but then if you're doing that, then you're not getting to do like all the other crazy stuff. And there's all those Atlas passive skill trees where you just like do the thing like you only get the notables or you only get the small nodes, and you just do silly trees like that. I don't know. I'm not sold on harvest yet. And I think it could feel weird, the idea of going in, doing a harvest, and before it'd be like, okay, I'm going to spend 20 minutes here with all my different items. Now it's kind of like, oh, I didn't get anything. That I think will feel a bit strange. Go on, Grim.
I'm wondering. I'm surprised that they did this after all this time, right? After so much reluctance to make this tradable for like how long is since Harvest? Was that like more than a year, right? Like 2 years, something like that. I'm actually surprised. I wonder what the tipping point was. Was it the fact that last league they added the ability to block it and they realized that like 99% of people blocked it? I wonder if that was like the maybe we should rework Harvest thing.
I mean, that gives you a good measurement of how much people like mechanics, right? Because you can just check how many people picked that node, and then you're like, okay, people hate it. We probably should change it.
So there's a few things I have on the is harvest bait. So first of all, there are still good crafts available on the harvest bench. We've seen one, which is the Reforge More Likely. This is one of the most powerful Reforges that was actually present in Harvest, and it's still there, and it's actually not that expensive. From one patch that we saw in the trailer, the person got around 150 to 180 life force, and that's about 2 to 3 standard Reforges, like the bad ones. It's a reasonable way to that really powerful craft I just mentioned as well. So there's definitely going to be very, very high demand for the harvest crafts, at least specific colors. In addition to that, on one of Ziggy's points, I was under the impression that they actually increased the chance of the tier 4 bosses to spawn, and they would still be guaranteed to drop Oshabi, which also in turn also guarantees you to get crystallized life force. So I don't know if I'm wrong about that, but
it didn't actually sound like it was guaranteed to get crystallized life force for one,
oh,
and
no.
also it's extremely variable the amount like they can get. It's an easy lever for them to pull exactly how much you get when you do get it as well.
Why you gotta yank
was-
the scopium? Just let him be.
I think it's no guarantee. I actually think it should be guaranteed though, because I think it really sucks when you kill a boss and you get literally nothing. Like literally nothing drops. So and because it is such a scalable thing, they should make it so she always drops some life force. Or does she just not have any life force this day? Like that doesn't make any sense. So it should, since it is so scalable, it should make it always drop it. But I don't actually think it's guaranteed. And yeah, there's a big difference between like I got 3 life force and the craft costs 1,000.
It's just gonna be the yellow
Yeah.
default life force every time.
And then the other point was, I believe they did say that augments are in, but they got the Ashling treatment. Now, this is, in my opinion, not the best change, but
What's that
I mean,
mean?
it's
It's an
like so
organelle,
basically,
right?
yeah, you do slam a modifier, but then it rips one off randomly. Like it's there, but it's kind of like not really usable unless you're Mr. Moneybags. Unfortunately, that's the way that kind of ends up going.
-2 divine orbs coming in, hot and heavy.
Yeah, pretty much. And my final point was a bit of a concern actually, because there's obviously 3 base different colors: the blue, pink, and yellow, and all of the crafts are just always accessible, right? And there are still powerful ones on there, and I'm a little bit worried that I will not feel compelled to spend any life force because the price will just be dictated by the best craft in that color type.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh damn, I may as well just sell it to this crafting tycoon guy because he's gonna use it better than me. May as well just use some essences instead. That would be the worst timeline.
Do we only know that there's 2 different types of life force in each color, like crystallized and non-crystallized, or is there more? Because if there's a higher granularity of types, then that kind of solves that problem. Because that is the problem you have when you have only one currency that can be exchanged for the crappiest thing and the best thing. You run into that situation. It's
Yeah, I'm
4.
not too sure.
Won't the
Yeah,
market? The market's just going to
They've got
determine
to
it,
split
though,
up a bit.
based on how much the people who harvest craft are willing to spend. Like over time, you'll have just a supply demand, and it'll equalize to some number based on what money they can get crafting versus not crafting, right?
Yeah, I mean, it should be interesting to see how it plays out at the very least, but I can say for sure, similar to what Tarke was saying earlier, this is another Alcon mechanic. It takes very little time to do. And if you're looking to make some currency like in week 2, this is absolutely going to be one of the best ways.
Okay.
Does apparently life force dropping does scale with your map a bit now though, but Alcon is generally sufficient for that.
Yeah.
Choose Loudfall, yeah, for sure.
Before we move off Harvest, so do any of you think you'll spec into Harvest on the Atlas tree just now? Not saying later in the league on your league
see
start.
it first. I'm gonna have to see it first, I think.
I can say pretty confidently I 100% will spec into it now. Previously, I hated Harvest. I will 100% use it.
I am absolutely taking Harvest on my League start tree and the in-game tree. There's no doubt about it.
Okay. Well, I'll be curious to check in a week's time and see if that was the right or wrong move. So going into going into the next league rework, though, I'm sure some people have some feelings about this. Beyond into Scourge.
Oh, a bit sad. Bit sad about that one. Anyway, I'll let you guys talk about it before I bring my tears out.
Okay, from an SSF point of view, I think that's very much one of those things where when I saw that thing, I'm like, oh, this is great for casual players, and this is like awful for anyone who like previously used to really enjoy Beyond, because it's that whole thing of I think Balor's been the funnest person to watch with that, because you just see his like brain sink, because it's the whole thing of once a boss spawns, no more Beyond. And that's such a massive granular shift. So it's a situation of you go into your map, there's a flat 15% chance that things spawn, and then eventually, once one boss spawns, that's it. So it could be a situation of you go into like a graveyard, and in the first screen of your graveyard, your boss spawned, your mechanic's done, or it could feel really good. You're getting Scourge monsters throughout the entire map, and that seems like such a strange choice, if you ask me.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that, but yeah.
You want to go first, Grim? Let's go.
No, I want to go last because I have a bit to say about this one.
My thoughts when I saw this was like, some of the people who liked Beyond because it was good for juicing and good for XP will be sad about these changes, but I love it. Fewer, stronger, more interesting monsters, and the return of tainted currency. Although there was what's the opposite of a silver lining, where GGG is like, you get tainted fusings back, and I'm like, yes, I love sixlings, but you're gonna get less of them. Oh yeah, I guess that's fair. Also, we nerfed them. Oh. How many tainted fusings do you think it takes to make a corrupted sixlink now? It better not be 1,500, I tell you.
They didn't nerf it, Ziggy. That would imply it has a chance of being alive. They adjusted them. Okay, they're dead.
Adjusted. Oh, so they made it easier to get a sixlink. Is that what that? Because adjusted, because it could imply that, right? That's probably not.
Nice. Yeah, definitely good.
No. To be fair, though, Ziggy, they had to make it harder to get 6 links because that new 20 fusing recipe would break the economy otherwise.
It's true.
Yeah.
I'm also with Ziggy on this one. It's definitely, I can see that juicers aren't going to like it, but I love it because I have a bad computer, and Beyond was one of the mechanics where I put it on the map, and all of a sudden my PC doesn't work, my game doesn't work, so I never want to run it. And if it solves that by adding less like just crazy screen clutter and less PC downtime, and I can see the mechanic and it's maybe enjoyable, I'm gonna like it a lot. So I feel like it's a positive change for me and other people that don't like the juice.
Go on, Grim.
Okay, so I'll say that from a game design perspective, for the majority of players, it is definitely a very good change. The mechanic looks way more interesting. It's more visually appealing, and it's got its own signature drop now. Beyond never dropped anything but generic loot, so it was kind of just like whatever. So yeah, big win for most people overall. But obviously the top 0.1%, a little bit sad. I think the most fun I've ever had in Path of Exile is when I was like barbecuing some eggs on my PC while I was watching a PowerPoint and getting insane amounts of loot. It was just so much fun, and I'm going to be very sad to see the likes of Hast and Effigy and all that go, because I think those are some of the best designed bosses they've ever actually made. Very, very easy to read all their moves, and they were terrifying, and you could like kind of dodge around them. It's like, yeah, it's a little bit sad, but I think the new Beyond definitely has its place. It's just not going to be for juicing, because as you said, after you get the map boss or whatever the boss is, it gets turned off, which is a little bit weird. Definitely a different mechanic for sure.
I like how there's a node that makes the boss like spawn earlier or something, and it's like I can actually see that being a detriment to anyone who's like really juicing their maps. Probably like if you're just throwing Beyond on and not doing much else, it's probably fine. But because I imagine you're not seeing bosses every map based on the way that they kind of phrase this whole thing. So, but I'm sure if you're juicing, you will see a boss. sooner or later on your map.
Yeah, well, I think it could be quite rewarding actually, depending on how good the tainted fusings are now. Like if you say that they're about what 3 times as good as a normal fusing, well, they're worth 1 chaos each, and if they're even better than that, they're worth even more than that. Depends on how many you get though, and how often you get the boss. Like the old Scourge bosses used to pour them out. You get like heaps of them, so it's got potential. We'll see.
I'm curious to talk to Ziggy about his favorite mechanic. The only time, well, not the only time, but I think it's one of the best times I've ever had talking to Ziggy. Just the rage, the Archnemesis changes. You were so angry last league, and I loved it. It was great.
I don't know why they didn't just wait a league on the Archnemesis implementation, but maybe I guess they really needed the feedback because I don't know. Yeah, Archnemesis was a disaster for me. Last league, it was such a weird situation because like I feel like endgame PoE is like the best it's been. It's getting better and better. We've got the awesome Atlas tree, customizability, and everything's really good. Gameplay is great, but Archnemesis was such a flip for that. It really drained all of my Path of Exile experiences. I played the least amount I've ever played last league as well, which I don't think is unrelated. So I was very happy to see some Archnemesis changes. My general thoughts are that what they're doing here is making Archnemesis as it is now fit into the game really well. So they're doing like the best possible implementation of it. But I don't know still that it's like a net positive for PoE. The Archnemesis modifiers themselves specifically and the combinations of some of them. I just don't know if they're fun. Most of them. Like, I don't know if I want to just spend all my time battling, poison globules that are dumping down on my head and stacking ground slows and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't. We talked about this a lot before with implementation last league, but it doesn't feel like you're fighting mobs anymore. But I'm hoping and I'm coping that if we're going to be seeing only like one rare every so often and far fewer rares in general, that maybe it will feel like a bit of a fight again, and there'll be enough time and space and visual clarity to engage with these things, and maybe I'll start to see the fun of it, hopefully.
Lance?
I can sense the inner rage a little bit from Ziggy, which is so funny to me because I always viewed Ziggy as the most positive person freaking ever. So
it's not rage, as like disappointment.
Yeah,
it's a bummer. It's just a bummer because I'm like, I feel like it puts a wet blanket over everything that I do in PoE.
I think the point you made about you're not fighting mobs anymore is just, it feels so true and it feels so bad. The mechanic where the most dangerous monster to me is a dead monster with ground effect, with the after death explosions, the after death effect, the stuff you can't see, I'm going to click on my betrayal monster to look at the dialogue, and oh, I died in the dialogue. I'm going to click on my harvest so I can craft. Oh, I died while looking at the crafting bench. There's like, it's the most frustrating deaths I have in PoE is always the ones where the fight is over, everything has stopped. I am now trying to read text and I'm dying. Why? Why does it have to be a thing? So I usually try to be pretty positive and be like, okay, they thought this through, they're making good changes. Like I try to look at the positive things, but a lot of those mechanics I don't see it. They just feel so bad to play. So
and the weird thing is, like, I'm very on board with the idea of having rares be far more substantial, having them be more threatening and more significant. And like I said, I love the implementation of how they're going, like making Archnemesis fit better into that vision by having there be a lot fewer rares and having them be very rewarding, from time to time when they drop interesting, different loot. That's all cool stuff. I'm super on board with. But yeah, like what you're talking about, it's the execution of the modifiers, I guess, the design of what their threats are.
The threats they don't feel like a fair threat type of thing. Like you're not fighting that. It's not something you can react to. It's something that's happening after the fact or something you can't see sort of situation.
For me, it was always just the fact that how much they singled out particular builds, and they have, in their defense, like I recently saw, they've changed Bone Shatter specifically, so it's no longer stun immune, it's like 800% stun avoidance. But it was the same thing with like Shock, and it worries me for one of the new skills, Lightning Conduit. Is just like you get the wrong like sack of Archnem mods, and this guy's just like, yeah, I have like 80% reduced shock, I've like 1,000% more resistances, and it's like, oh cool, my build just like gets dicked. I had that issue really badly last week playing Lightning Trap when everything was like shock immune, and the amount of like conditional damage I lost being a sab and everything, it was like I was losing so like 250% crit chance, I was losing all the multiplier that I'd invested into, and with stuff like that, I think it's fine if you have certain bosses where it's like, oh, my build feels bad against a particular boss, but you don't want to be in a situation where it's like there's just a chance that every map I run is like, oh, I'm screwed now, because you already have to contend with the map mods and all these other different things in Path of Exile. I don't think you need that on top of it as well.
And that feels like a big step backwards. You may recall back in, I don't know, years and years ago now, when they kind of first released the initial Guardians and Shaper.
Yeah. Phoenix being like Ignite immune and stuff.
Yeah, so one was Ignite immune, 2 were Poison immune. I was playing a Viper Strike build at the time, which Viper Strike was very weak at that point, but I was playing Poison build through in hardcore, and having a great old time, you know, slowly making way through things, then getting to bosses that were just hard immunities. And at the time I made a video talking about like the game design problem of immunities in Path of Exile and how it was a big issue for the game. And GG like listened to that, and they had like a really good response to it, and removed and dealt with a lot of that sort of stuff. And that was like a really cool step forwards, I think, for the game to move away from the Diablo 2 immunities thing, which they were kind of like holding on to that as like some archaic design, and being like, huh, actually, is this a good thing for the game? Or, you know, are we just doing it because it's like a thing that was in D2? And now I feel like we go backwards with Archnem and we get a bunch of immunities back. But it's not just even worse because it's not specific things that you're like, oh, okay, I know this boss is immune to something. It's like random shit you're encountering constantly without any warning.
I'm pretty sure Wither immunity still exists, which really bums me out, because it seems like they've gone through everything and now gone, okay, reduced effects, reduce this. They're just like, oh, Wither immunity, screw anyone playing like a Black Flame build invested into Wither. It's like, all right, cool, you know.
This is probably going to be my controversial opinion of the podcast, but I think you have to give some credit to GGG, because it was immunity and they switched them all to like reduced effect, and that's stuff you can play around. Like, although yes, you're not going to get as good of a shock on an 80% reduced shock monster, that you can get way more than 80% shock on your tree, and when you're fighting rare monsters, their HP pools are a lot lower. You can get penetration on gear, you can deal with a lot of those, I guess, a lot of that counter mods that stack together. Because at the end of the day, they're only going to stack up to 75 res, or if they get max res, they can go up to maybe 90. And if you have 40 pen, you're still dealing a significant amount of damage. And if you have some shock effect on your build, you should be able to counter the reduced shock effect. So I don't think it's like going to completely brick your build like it did in the past. Because they did walk it back from immunities for most of the things. Maybe they still miss Wither. I haven't used Wither too many times.
There's still a few. They have like done a good job of making some of the most problematic problems less worse than they were. I'll say that for sure. Although I will, on the topic of immunities, like 80% avoidance of an ailment is still basically immunity
so bad.
as well. In the terms of like, this feels very, very bad. You know, unless it's like a significant major boss or something, like, then maybe that sort of stuff should always be tied to mechanics anyway. But that's the thing, like this should be like, there should be some like ability that they do that makes them immune for that period that you can play around when you're doing stuff like this.
You're interacting with it.
Yeah, it's like if the monster slams you then get like debilitated, fine, like I messed up, I got hit by the thing, but just walking up to a rare who's just like, I just counter your build, and if you were playing any other build you wouldn't even notice it. I think that's the thing which annoys me so much, is it's like I had this encounter last league where it's like, it felt like the vast majority of the time I would just completely ignore Archnem mods, so I just delete them. And then it's so binary between like, I either completely delete this mob, or it's like, this is the longest fight I've ever done. And that's kind of the issue that I had with it.
The other problem is like, this was somehow supposed to get us to better understand the monsters we were fighting and what they could do, but it definitely hasn't achieved that, because you want something like, okay, this monster can purge ignites, right? That's a mechanic that it has. And when it does that, I see it pick up a bucket and pour water over its head. I was like, great, cool. This is a monster that pours buckets of water over its head and it gets rid of my ignite. So okay, I gotta blow up the bucket first, so it can't do that. And you're like, sweet, that's a cool mechanic, right? That's fun. But instead, we get like a monster with dongle schism written underneath it in purple text, and you're like, you gotta know that means it's immune to your big ass thunder cubes, and it's got 20% avoidance for this, and it purges this, does more damage when you curse it. So that's kind of what we got instead. So I don't know how that achieves the stated goal there.
Grim?
Yeah, watch out for those dongle schisms. I couldn't think of any of the names.
I mean, for all I know, that is a name. But yeah, what do you think, Grim?
Might as well be.
Okay, so I'm definitely not a build aficionado or anything like that. Not an expert like some of these other players. But when I was building my character last league, I just could not get enough resistance to spells as a duelist. And everything seems to be a spell from Archnemesis, like the mirages, like the mortars, it's like everything's a spell. And it's pretty hard to get enough max res as well to deal with that. And then now I need chaos resistance as well because there's a bunch of chaos ones. So it just does feel like there's just a few too many mods. I can't identify them in the heat of the moment, which is an issue. And then my character needs to have so many different things to deal with all the different Archnemesis modifiers that are out there now. And I think that really is the problem for me. It feels like they sat down and they're like, okay, let's design 100 of these things. And they were coming up with all these crazy ideas. Like, we've never seen lightning damage over time. And now suddenly there's one of those. And you can't play Doriani's prototype anymore without getting one shot when that pops up. So yeah, I think that they probably need to remove 50% of the Archnemesis modifiers and maybe spend a little bit more time on the ones which they do have and make them pick up buckets of water so that we can identify them easily. Especially,
God, I'd love to have just like 10 different Archnemesis things that are like that are like well thought out, like clear cut physical gameplay kind of designs. I'd be on board for that.
I think there's just too many of them, yeah, for sure. And they could even combine ones like like I think the ice cage in principle is like, it's like, cool, okay, I know that one, I can get out of it, makes sense, not too bad. But like when there's stuff like grasping vines, it's like, okay, I can't really do anything here. It's just gonna screw me up, right? Less of those and more of the ones where you can react, like Ziggy said.
I think Archnemesis was definitely an example of, you get this sometimes, and it hadn't felt like this for a while, but some leagues, I think that there's someone at GGG who's like, let's design Hall of Grandmasters. It's like, no, let's not do Hall of Grandmasters and purposely try and target and screw over as many people as possible. Let's just like design a fun monster. And I think that was very much a situation where it's just like, okay, we'll get 5 people in a room and it's just like, call out the most bullshit mechanics you can. And they're like, yes, that would be really annoying. Write that down. Yeah.
It's hostile game design, like designing specifically to try and screw your players. Like if you have like a DM in Dungeons and Dragons who is specifically designing like gotcha mechanics.
That's actually the best. It very much feels like a DM who it's like, oh wait, your class can do that one thing to counter this thing. You'll never see that again in this campaign. I got really annoyed the last time I played D&D. I was playing a monk and the DM thought he was really cool because he was shooting me with a poison bolt, and I caught the arrow and he's like, wait, you can do that? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, right. I never caught a fucking arrow for the rest of that campaign. Played for a year and he never targets you with any projectiles. I'm like, screw you.
The archers never shoot the monks in D&D.
Yeah.
Classic.
They're like, do I go for the guy wearing no armor or do I go for the really heavily armored warrior? Definitely the guy with the armor and the shield. That's what I would target. Well.
Certainly. I will say though, on like a different note to the Archnemesis's BS, I do like what they did with the rewards. That is very interesting to me. It completely changes the game from my perspective, and I have lots of different things I want to try now, and it does really put all of the different league mechanics and different things that you can do in a different light, right? Because now suddenly, Metamorph, right? You can choose the different components, and the Archnemesis modifiers show up when you're choosing those components. And Metamorphs have way more loot than anything else. So, they drop like 100 items. So you can maybe cherry pick that Solaris or whatever it's called touched and get 100 maps. Like, whoa, okay.
I need you to shut up now. Okay, just shush.
Okay.
Shush.
Do you reckon that those mechanics will transfer to the metamorphs?
They do.
I guess the
That's
mods
way it
do.
works
So
right now.
Mm.
I mean, maybe
Well,
I don't
right
know.
now
I
they
mean,
don't give any extra loot. So how do you know?
correct, yes. Well, I mean, yeah, that's the idea at least, right? And of course we got the rare nerf. You know that. Okay, that's kind of feels bad. Poor headhunter. You know, whatever. No one uses that item anyway. But there is substantially more loot obviously on offer, but there is still a bunch of mechanics which guarantee rares in your map, like essences, right? And that's on the map device, so you can like artificially insert like
go up.
5 or 6 rare monsters even without the essences. It might be really good
Essence
because of the Archnemesis
stonks.
modifiers. Yeah, bestiary as well is pretty good. You get tons of rares. So it's like, okay, there's some pretty interesting stuff going on here. And you know, if there's a currency conversion one, okay, maybe get some pretty good loot.
What's that
We haven't
headhunter thing you
seen the
mentioned? Was
Atlas
that
skill tree
leveling
this
item
league.
from
Oh, sorry, Ziggy.
Nemesis? Oh, I was just wondering what that headhunter thing was. Was that
Oh,
leveling item from Nemesis?
Garbage item, dude.
It was
Don't
like a
worry
low
about that one.
level unique you got for like, yeah, it wasn't that good. Or if
Yeah,
I
it's,
recall correctly.
yeah.
No, people didn't really use it back then because we couldn't kill rares fast enough for it
You
to be
would have to
strong.
give up Worm's Molt and you lose Leech, so kind of not worth.
Yeah.
No,
Oh. Fancy item, yep.
No,
They're just bringing it back to its roots. Yep. Good old days.
I was gonna ask her, have we seen the any pictures of the updated Atlas skill tree? We haven't, have we?
I think it's pretty much the same, but with some changes to Harvest Beyond.
I'm
and
really hoping
removed
they move
the-
Essence, because I always take Essence and it's kind of boring taking the exact same, like, just move
I
stuff.
don't think they moved it.
Move it!
Don't think they moved it.
Ah.
And I'm making a specific change just because that annoys you, Tarke.
Well, no, you have to admit though, them just like completely reshuffling the Atlas passive skill tree would be so much more exciting. Because I feel like at this point, a lot of us have kind of got into our patterns of like what we like, what we don't like, and I think just moving it around, just letting us like do some silly little things, you know.
I mean, they moved Stream of Consciousness, and it made me take
it's
3 extra points
to the right now.
They
I
changed
don't know
the
about
passive tree and Grim's screwed.
I don't know about this rework, Tarky. I think we're gonna have to reconsider.
They've moved one key node. It's like, okay.
Yeah. No, it'd be interesting for sure, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Shuffling it constantly just sounds like asking for a headache. Like,
well, I'm not asking to do it like
constantly.
every week, but it's kind of we've had it. This is what our 3rd league, and it's been pretty much. I know they added a bunch of new stuff recently, but I feel like once, maybe twice a year, they could just like move stuff a little bit. You know, swap beyond an expedition. You know.
In my opinion, it's quite well designed, and I don't really see how you could really rework it in a meaningful way without adding another 2 influences or something like that. Like if you added like a green influence and a pink influence, then you could have like, you know, you start in the middle and then you can go out to the different corners. But how would you really restructure it any other way than the bosses at the end?
Just
and
move some of the nodes around. Like what? It's just like, oh, best trees on the left, put it on the fucking right. Just move shit.
Plan a different tree. Just plan a different tree, Tarky. You have the power. Just do it.
No. Okay, no. Because the reason why I say this is it's with the way that it's structured, especially with like all the boss stuff now, it's very difficult if you're like if 9% of the mechanics you want are on the right and there's one thing you want on the bottom left, you're probably just not taking that. So I don't think it's that unreasonable to be like, it would be kind of fun if they just like moved like 2-3 things around. I don't think that's like the craziest idea, you know.
I think the idea is it's like for Tarke, for example, I think he's clearly an essence player, so he feels like he has to path near the essence nodes, and then he has to pick mechanics that are near those nodes. Versus if he wanted to go on like the left side of the tree with like Blight, for example, that's like a huge path out of the way to go start picking up Blight nodes. And if you swap the tree around, maybe you could mix certain mechanics that aren't really close to each other on the tree together. It's Blight's like on the left, Beyond's is on the left, and then you have like
exactly. Like
right.
For example, so many trees you see are doing the basic like Essence, Strongbox, Shrine, Harvey, and they take those because they're generically strong, but also they're close to one another. If you just move them around a little bit, then suddenly it's like, oh, maybe I might do something different, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think the main ones to move would be stuff like Science, the Sextant one, and stuff like that, because those being in very specific places does mean you have to like do certain mechanics with them.
Apparently, some things did move, Tarky. There you go.
Oh,
PoE Planner is updated.
Thank you. Well, since we've had the exciting maybe one keynote is moved somewhat. What do we think about the new gems?
They seem cool,
Well,
but I don't have enough slots or skill binds or fingers to add more skills.
I think the one which calls down the lightning could be cool. That they're very conditional, aren't they? There's a lot of hoops that you need to jump through, and like I was like, okay, so when I first saw the lightning one, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So maybe I could do like some sort of like a cast on crit, like shock with the cyclone, and then have the lightning coming down as I crit. It's like, oh yeah, it's like nope. When you trigger it, it's gonna cool down. It's like, ooh, maybe not that one then. But yeah, I mean, I think they have very at least the one which calls down the lightning has pretty high numbers from what I understand. So I could definitely see it potentially seeing some play because of that. But I can tell you for sure, none of them are going to be the next big mapper. That's for sure.
I have some opinions about. First of all, Alchemist Mark I think is a completely dead. I think it's there to automate basically Flame Surge for Ignite builds, and I think for Poison builds it's just bait. And for the Overcharge, I think that's useful in some scenarios. But then when it comes to, I actually like, so I'm not too big on like the support and Alchemist Mark, but the two new skills, they're playing more into the two skill, the multi skill setup sort of thing. So they're more awkward. Where in the current game where we're limited on sockets, it doesn't quite fit right now. But I think there are scenarios where you can make it work and make it feel decently. Like I know a lot of people are talking about Conduit just because its numbers look quite strong. I actually am more interested in playing with the Galvanic Field because I think there could be some fun, somewhat automated mechanics you can set up for. Like, for example, I would like to try doing a build with Tempest Shield, which sounds weird, where basically I'm only have a really fast cast time for Galvanic Field. I'm not investing into cast speed at all in my tree, but with enemies hitting me, I'm dealing damage off Tempest Shield. That's shocking them, proccing Galvanic Field, so I can have basically like 2 6-link setups where I have a 100% quality of life build where I'm moving around dealing lightning damage still. And the numbers are still decent on it, I believe. When I was looking at it, it wasn't like terrible for a completely automated skill, which is you cast it once and it lasts for like 7 seconds or something, and you can scale that with duration.
I wasn't too sure how that would work. So you apply the buff to yourself, and then when you shock something, it applies the field to them. And then when that monster dies, do you get the buff back, or like
you just have to recast? It's a half a cast time, so it's a very fast casting skill. And then on top of that, it lasts a really long time, and it's actually got a really big AoE. In the showcase, for the trailer, they showcased it probably with a build that actually has like a level gem, and you can see it's like almost covering the entire screen. And then in the showcase where they talked about it to explain the mechanics, I think they used like a level 1 gem because it scales with radius with levels and stuff. And you can see in the showcase where they're like, this is how the gem works. It was like this small ball, but in the trailer, it was literally covering the screen. So clearly, I believe you can scale the AoE, and I would imagine they have like maybe a, I don't know, 50% AoE or something on the trailer video side of the thing with a level gem. But then you get a character that actually boosts the levels on top of actually getting real AoE investment, like vast power, stuff like that. You're covering over your entire screen, I'm going to imagine. And I think it could be really cool. It's like one of the more aesthetic skills too. It looks really interesting to me.
Yeah. The bubble skill looks like it actually could be pretty good. The lightning thing looks like a PoE2 skill more to me. It's I like the idea of big finisher skills. I like Val skills. Why have we never got any more Val skills? But yeah, it might be, I don't know. That'll see too much use. We'll see. The numbers are good on it, so we'll see how that plays out. But
oh, sorry, I interrupted you. I was just gonna say on the Stormcall
go ahead.
Like, imagine a world where the AoE is so big that you had shock prolif and you prolif the whole screen, and then you clicked it once and just one shot everything.
Could be really satisfying.
Don't know.
That would be an aesthetics build for sure.
Yeah. Which that can be enough. We got a really cool feel.
But then you see a rare which is like, yo, 80% reduced effective shock, bitch, with like life regen, and it's got like temporal bubbles on it, and you're like, oh, my build feels fucking terrible. Yeah.
The curse is very weird. They took the flask charge generation, which I liked off the other one, which is a bit sad, and put on this one. And I think it's a fair bit weaker, isn't it? Oh, it works for utility flask now. I don't think it did that
I think it's
before.
got quite a big cooldown there.
Yeah, it's like one every 3 seconds. One charge every 3
Oh.
seconds, but
Yeah, it's very,
it works
very
for
rough.
utilities. So, and it's so weird that it's like for dot builds and the way that it does that as well, because curses are very competitive for dot builds. Because you got flammability, you got elemental weakness, you got temporal chains for poison builds, you've
Despair,
got the
which is
despair,
pretty
yeah.
fucking important.
You got despair,
Yeah.
which is very strong. So like, yeah, if you can do some stacking, even then you've still got like 2 good options before this curse in many cases. And then on top of that, it's the ground mechanic. So that doesn't really exist for poison, but this skill doesn't really look very good for most poison builds. But for the ignite side of things, it's like, okay, that's a little bit more promising. But you've already got a lot of burning ground options for ignite builds, and it doesn't stack with them. The way burning ground works is you only have the one strongest instance of it. So if that's still flame trap or whatever, or flame surge,
yeah, you choose flame surge to have a worse time playing the game because you hate yourself a little bit.
Fire trap.
Or you choose this and it's a little bit more automated, and then you lose damage from the opportunity cost of the curse you would have.
Well, and you can't use fire trap, which is just better. Like, you know.
Hey, it got nerfed.
It's still the numbers on fire trap are still the same. So my issue with it, because I've been looking quite a lot at League starters, and at the moment I've been looking at poison a lot. And for poison specifically, it's a really strange setup. Because for ignite, there's the issue that, yeah, you've got other burning ground sources, and as Ziggy said, you've got flammability, you've got any weakness, you've got like punishment, you've got loads of curse options. So there. I think it makes the most sense on poison because you've got despair, which is super important. You can use punishment, but then yeah, maybe that would be where it slots in, and you can then get like the frenzy charge on hit things because you've got the mark masteries near the poison nodes. But then you have to take +1 curse, and it only takes the biggest poison, and most poison builds are like lots of small poisons. And you could make a whole new build, which is like Earthquake or doing like max charge Scourge arrows, but then there's so few sources of lowering enemy chaos res, it's really hard to ever compete with despair. So then you need to get multiple curses while also investing into mark effect. And then because it's a mark, you can only use it on rares and bosses, so it's not like something that you can like throw into your map clear. If you were playing maybe like an occultist poison build, you've already got multiple curses that way. And it just feels very clunky in a lot of different setups. And
it's a weird one.
It's very strange. And it's also one of those things of, because it's dropping a poison ground, you then need to also be scaling like AoE, because if the boss moves, it's like, well, that was a waste. So there's a lot of weird things there. I think probably the best use case for it I see is if you were doing ignite explosive concoction, because then it's a situation of you're getting some early flash charge automation. A lot of those people play it as elementalists, and there's kind of some synergy there. But it definitely does feel a bit weird. And also, while we talk about poison builds, why did they nerf Pathfinder?
We're talking about the Infinite Flask thing?
Well, no, there's that.
Yeah,
That I don't. Them nerfing
damage and flagellant.
Yeah, them nerfing the flagellant flask, I think, is fine because that was broken. But they in the Balance Manifest, they're like, okay, Pathfinder was seeing really low usage, so what we're going to do is we're going to rework the 4-point Master Alchemist node. Oh, and Nature's Boon, yeah, we're just going to remove some reduced LE damage taken, and we're not going to replace it with anything. So it's just like they just took this node, nerfed it, and then they nerfed Master Surgeon by nerfing Flagellant. So it's just like they just hit Pathfinder really awkwardly, and it's just like, okay, cool. And then they've done that in the same league. They've introduced this new skill, which a lot of people want to use on like Pathfinder Poisonous Concoction, which it isn't even good for. So it's just like, oh, come on,
That's kind of one of the... Sorry, go Grim.
Oh no, you go ahead. I was just gonna say Pathfinder doesn't really have a very strong identity right now.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that was one of the changes where they're like, we're gonna help buff some of these ascendancies, and I just got kind of question marks above my head. Like this doesn't like Master Alchemist was straight up the worst node on the tree. I don't think people might try to debate, but I'm pretty sure Master Alchemist was the worst. And Nature's Boon, in my opinion, just wasn't OP because you have Trader Keystone, you have one implicit that's basically the same thing on your chest. Like it used to be a niche thing that only Pathfinder had, and you can get it in a lot of different sources now. So I didn't feel like that mechanic was like busted or anything. It didn't need to get nerfed. So they buffed Master Alchemist to not make it worthless, but they made the node before it worth less. So now if you're grabbing the 4 nodes, it's like a net 0 gain defensively in terms of 20% flask effect on like Ruby, Sapphire, and Topaz. If you're running all the elemental flask effect, is the same thing as 6% reduced damage, except worse in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So it's like mathematically, it's like, oh really? This doesn't even why?
They couldn't let Pathfinder numbers go up to like 2% representation. It would have been too powerful.
To be fair, I still do know a lot of people league starting Pathfinder.
I'm probably
Despite
going
being
to
nerfed.
League start at Pathfinder Poisonous Concoction, but it's just like, I don't know. I think it's bullshit that they did that. But no. Since we talk about Ascendancies, someone who's remotely interested, can talk about Jug briefly before we talk about Trickster. They did something to Jug. Come on, it's like
Oh,
Juggernaut. Fuck off.
The Jug change is interesting. Like the 2 nodes are like the 2 new nodes. And I think they're decent, but it's a pretty point competitive Ascendancy. And like thinking about like most builds in which I would take one or both of those nodes, there's plenty of other ones that I want as well. So they took a node that was independently a little bit stronger. But like I don't know how to math this, but like the old node was
The best node.
yeah, it was a good node, right? It was really strong. And then they split it in half and made 2 new nodes, and then made those a bit better. So they're pretty good nodes.
They're collectively worse than the old node.
Yeah, and then you've got a lot of points that you want to spend on it. So I don't know if that's a net positive. I like the design of the new ones, but
I'll be honest, I didn't read the Juggernaut changes, but is the node they split the accuracy stacker one?
No.
Okay, that is technically the best node, but the other best node.
I don't know. I don't play that Ascendancy.
I read it and I
regen
forgot it because it wasn't that
thing.
memorable. So okay, Ziggy, if you could remind me and Grim, what do they actually change it to?
Let me see which version of Path of Building I've got.
The numbers.
I have the old version. Okay, cool. So they changed Unbreakable, which was the one that had a bit of everything. It had regen, 2% regen, 5% reduced damage taken. The body armor is doubled one, which is the main one you'd probably remember when you think of it. That's the like identity one of it. And then the 1.5 fizz prevented from hits in the past 10 seconds as regenerates life. So it had like built always regular regen from damage mitigation, the armor thing, and then just some straight up reduced damage taken on it. And they split it into 2 nodes. One is the reduced damage taken node, and one's the regen node. So they were pretty nice things to have together. I like the way that they split the nodes, but I'd have to look up the patch notes to remember.
Sounds very exciting. Lance, you gonna leak that Jug then? Yeah,
it's Jug.
No,
Yep, Jug.
I feel like Jug basically. There's like if you can cheese a ridiculous amount of armor, the pseudo transcendent node becomes powerful. But until you have a very cheese build, I think it's just worse because they split basically the strongest node into 2 weaker nodes. There's some weird like.
So it does a thing now where it mitigates elemental damage based on armor. Right?
Yeah, but it's 8% of armor, and the way armor calculations work, and the way elemental damage is based around you having resistance, it's just not going to be good until you have a very large amount of armor, because it's basically going to be negligible. You have to have like a very large amount of armor, and you have to have good elemental resistances. I think people see it and it sounds cool, but it's just numerically it doesn't work.
It's cool, but it's competing against the old node that just had straight up 5% reduced damage taken, which worked against elemental. And in the explanation for the patch notes, they're talking about how like armor doesn't work against elemental, giving the Juggernaut something to help them against elemental damage. But then it already had that by 5% reduced damage taken, which worked against elemental as well. So that it was a lot easier. So I don't know, it's a cool design, but yeah, it's a bit harder to get it actually working, whereas the other one just works straight away. It's kind of I keep seeing instances of Last Epoch mechanics making their way over into PoE. The Last Epoch has the thing where armor works against elemental damage, but at a reduced rate. So it kind of reminds me of that.
I saw you point, Grim. What are you pointing at?
Oh, I was just gonna say, so the new one allows armor to mitigate elemental. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes, at 8% of its value.
Well, I mean, you can get millions of armor, right? I mean, I think that's quite powerful. There's probably some potential there. And armor is like a unique mechanic in that it almost fully mitigates the hit, right? And that's not really possible with elemental anymore. So
It can
I can
mitigate
see
it.
someone.
It can mitigate it up to 90%. So what you can do is you can get 90 max res and then mitigate 90% of that leftover 10%. But it's only going to be that super niche scenario where you have freaking the aura armor stacker. Like it builds into one very min-maxed potential build, and then all of the I just want to be a thick jug build, it doesn't work.
Yeah. It's like
And then you
Replica
die
Dream
to dots
Feather
because you
or
didn't take
nothing,
the regen
right?
node.
Oh.
The dots still kill you.
I mean, I think it's probably like on the weak side as well, right? But I feel like a lot of these changes will probably crop up again in like 3 or 4 leagues, and it's like, wow, this thing's actually now overpowered or something like that. Like you see it all the time. Like when the actual like physical damage over time skills came out, everyone's like, these are trash, and now everyone's like, oh my god, they're actually super good. But yeah.
I think that's fair. I will say, and this was one of the disappointing things when we talk about Trickster, is it was just that general sentiment that we had such a long time without balance changes to then have a bunch of stuff where we're like, oh, these lightning gems could be good with PoE2. We're like, oh, this jug seemed interesting with future tech. It's a little bit disappointing that the changes we did see are kind of like future changes that aren't currently strong. It's like, you know what I mean?
I don't know, man. Like, remember when Bone Shatter came out and everyone's like, Lamau, Quinn 69 skill, and now people are league starting.
Yeah, but then do you remember when Archnemesis came out and all the Bone Shatter guys were like, Lamau, my build wouldn't fucking work, lit.
I mean, people are league starting it though. I've seen people like they're like, I'm league starting Bone Shatter, and it seems legit, right? Could you envision a world in which Mathel loads up the new skills and actually does all the content with them? I personally can envision that world, like with the lightning skills. And if the numbers are high enough, like they're probably gonna play it in Gauntlet because like if you can get all the damage for free, then you just build 100% defense. So I don't know. And like Seismic was like the class clown for the longest time. It was just a Tarke cap build, and then look at it like a league ago. Jeez Louise. So yeah, I think it swings and roundabouts. These things will probably end up being relevant one day. Probably. We'll see.
So with that, let's talk Trickster, because I've got some opinions on Trickster, Lance. You're least on your RF Trickster, right?
Yes.
Yes. Trickster rework. Go.
Okay. So you were talking about this before the podcast, but you were saying it's weak early on you were talking basically like polymath, you don't have masteries for your first lab. The basically the evasion, energy shield, escape artist doesn't really work till you have decent gear. The Heartstopper is probably one of the strongest defensively ones early on, but early on you're leveling, you don't really need defense, so it feels bad to not get a nice offensive boost to start juicing through the content. The frenzy charges, you don't have generation early, so it feels bad early. Like one step ahead, I think is like the only one that feels decent early on, and it's still just like 8% action speed, and you solved freeze early. So it has the early game problem where it feels weak on like normal lab, and it starts to get a little bit better cruel, and then it starts to pick up a lot in merciless. But that early game I think is going to be weak, and specifically for Trickster Righteous Fire, which is what I'm starting. I want to put this out there just so anyone's who's thinking about playing it, it's going to be scuffed for the early game of it. That's just the fact, especially if the unique change and the like rare drop is like bad or whatever, because it doesn't get free power like Inquisitor, where it's just like, oh, I sustain Righteous Fire since I got my second lab. You do need regen on your gear stuff to like make things work. And Trickster falls into the category of you kind of need more of those labs to kind of stack together. You need the masteries to make Polymath a good node to actually pick up the damage, stuff like that. So it does lack from the early game power, but I think late game there's a lot of very strong use cases. I think in most cases, I think it's going to be some of the strongest builds for CI, and I think people are sleeping on one step ahead for some of the abuse cases you can do with it.
Like
is my opinion
stuff like that?
What's that?
Like self-cursing and then using one
step ahead? Self-curse, stuff like that. You can it is very strong. For example, the only source of the main source of self-curse mitigation was like Juggernaut, but then you're playing a Juggernaut, and you're on the Juggernaut side of the tree.
Yeah.
This is self-curse ability on the Trickster side of the tree, and Trickster has good nodes. to scale up to some really crazy builds type of thing.
Oh man, why are you hating on the Juggernaut like that? Poor Jug.
But it's just true though.
Feels bad. Yeah, the Trickster's an interesting one because I like, okay, this is at least from my perspective. Like, I pretty much exclusively play mapping characters. So that's the disclaimer. I actually thought the Trickster was a little bit weak on the high end of things, actually. Because Energy Shield, from my perspective, isn't very competitive because it doesn't really gel with the armor evasion meta. You can't get suppression on that gear as easily, right? You can't do the whole determination molten shell stuff.
It's totally easy. They made it so much easier
Okay.
to get it on the tree.
Can you get 100% without doing
You
a gear?
Okay, the math is basically if you get the Inveterate cluster, which isn't that bad to path to, you get 40 suppress there, you get 20 from Ascendancy, you get about 22 from the one spell suppress cluster next to ES nodes, and then all you really need is like a spell suppress Eldritch Implicit, a phasing Quartz Flask, or basically the moral of the story is you get to 80 really, really easily, and the last little bit is also not too bad to get. Like you can wear Iziri's Step and take the mastery that gives you ES per evasion nodes, and you're capped. It's not that high.
Ziri's Step is going to be big this league.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm genuinely interested. So educate me. So I would imagine Trickster is probably going to be used for spellcasters and not necessarily like attack based. Like you wouldn't play Lightning Strike on it or like a bow, right?
Well, no, I think actually there's quite a few arguments to be made for like Trinity attack based stuff. I've seen some people like hyping that kind of stuff up.
Okay.
I've also seen a few people talking about playing stuff like Poison, Spectral Helix Assassin is one of the builds I'm maybe thinking about. Some people talk about doing some of those like poisony builds on Trickster, which I'm not 100% sold on, but like some quite decent players have been talking about doing stuff like that. I think it would be more for casters, but I do see some like Trinity attack builds, like Spectral Shield Throw could be one as well.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I guess from my perspective, I was like, okay, what are the big builds? So it's like Lightning Strike and bows. You play Lightning Strike on a champion or a raider. You play bows on a Deadeye or a raider. And then you got the spells, like it's like Blade Vortex and Winter Orb. You probably want to play that on an occultist, right, for the AoE and for the explosion. So it's like, okay, where does Trickster fit into this? But maybe I'm convinced now.
All the nodes are generic. They'll work for both spells or attack-based builds. I think the weakness for Trickster for attack-based is Shadow's not quite as good as an attack-based start compared to like Duelist or Ranger.
Yeah.
That'd be fine.
What do you think, Ziggy? Probably go into my big Trickster rant.
Trickster, I quite like new Trickster, and I really like the speedy node too, the speedy / slowy node. It is gonna be a little rough at league start, I think, for most people, and they also have a very solid plan going into it because you guys touched on it a bit, but some of the best like feeling league starts are usually with Ascendancies, where you really get a noticeable chunk of power when you do normal, cruel, or merciless lab, or even better, each time you do a lab, you get something, and you're like, oh, my build was so much better. Or you get Inquisitor, and you get the Consecrated Ground, or you get Battle Mage, or we're kind of comparing to that because you can play them both as Righteous Fire, for example, comparing like leveling Righteous Fire and Inquisitor, where you get the Consecrated Ground stuff and you do Cruel Lab and you rock Righteous Fire and you like feel like a god, versus Trickster, where none of that stuff really it gently eases into its power later on, and then it seems like it has some pretty cool potential later on, but yeah, it doesn't really hit any of those like super powerful things early on. Stuff that's not super noticeable while leveling, which is kind of a bummer because I think that should be a design goal for a lot of Ascendancy stuff. Is you should really feel it when you take one of those nodes. So I'm a little worried you don't really feel any of those until much later on. They're very deferred. Also, the cluster, and this isn't necessarily a problem because not every class needs to do this, but Trickster doesn't really suggest how you should play it very well. It doesn't really previously it was like it had the stuff that was like, I'm the dot class. Come play some damage over time with me.
He says he's the energy shield class. That's what he says, I think.
Yeah, and you can do, and that works a bit, but the defensive side of things, I think, for Ascendancies don't suggest how to play them as effectively as the offensive side of things.
Yeah, that's not picking a skill. That's saying you have to do defensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
A lot of people choose what they're going to play Ascendancy first, which is weird. Like because there's a bunch of different approaches. There's like unique first, like unique or interaction first, skill first, ascendancy first. A lot of people go ascendancy first, but which is a way of doing it. But and then you like pick a skill to go with it. Go like I'm gonna play a new Trickster. What am I going to play on it?
I don't know what you're talking about, Ziggy. It's got energy shield. Clearly, it's the energy blade ascendancy. Obviously.
Righteous fire. Righteous fire. It feels the damage.
Yeah. So I do really like the Trickster rework, and I think it's definitely one of the most interesting ascendancies right now. It's also one of the ascendancies that makes you think, which I really like. But I think that's also one of its biggest problems. There's quite a lot of like build archetypes and ascendancies where I would trust the average person with decent experience to be able to kind of like battle through it themselves and make it work. Whereas Trickster very much feels like a wait and copy like a waggle build. It's very much a copy someone else's setup, unless you're very confident in what you're doing. With just the way that polymath works, the fact that so many people read polymath wrong when it first got released, like I just get like 20 fire masteries, Lance. And yeah,
call me out like that, okay? Jeez.
There's a lot of bait in there, and I think what doesn't help as well as I would say its main like competitor at the moment would be Inquisitor. Because it's just very easy to contrast. Because a lot of people, as you say, Grim, think, oh, I want to do like spellcast with some ES support, and you instantly think Inquiz, and it's like if you're league starting in Inquiz, which is what we're going into right now, in your first like 20 levels, you've got Elite Overload, and you're instantly like, my build feels good. Whereas Trickster is really awkward in the sense that it starts a really long way away from Ellie Overload, so you kind of don't want to do an Ellie Overload build early, or you need to like force crit early, while forcing some like ES tech, while forcing as many masteries to scale your polymath. You have to route through escape artists to get to your other good nodes, and that will give you like nothing good early on. I think there's definitely a lot of potential there. I think it has some pretty good potential for like dot build specifically, because polymath gives you more damage, not like more damage over time multiplier, which can sometimes be kind of hard to get on those kind of builds. But I think it is one of those things which will like trip up a lot of players going to league start, that unless you're like super confident in what you're doing, I think it really invites spreading yourself too thin. Like I think that Eldritch Battery Mind Over Matter is a really strong concept going into this league, with like the mastery changes and the fact you can still use like Divine Blessing in it. And I've been trying to make loads of like EB Mom trees, and it's like I'm spreading myself pretty thin on my tree already, and I should probably be doing this on an Inquiz, not a Trickster. And it's just, I don't know, it's difficult to kind of fit everything in. It's very much one of those builds that invites you to over meme your character. I always tell people like, don't focus on too many different things, and I feel like Trickster invites you to invest into all the things.
The mastery.
Literally. The problem with Trickster, if there is a problem, I guess, because like I said, I do kind of like the design overall. The frenzy charge node is kind of like indicative of it, right? So they changed it was a frenzy power, and I think it had generate frenzy and power on it or something like that.
Yeah.
So they changed that so it's 2 max frenzies, bunch of frenzy charge duration, but then no way of generating. It's like the perfect example of this like Trickster problem. Like it's a very powerful node that doesn't do anything when you get it. You like pick that node up while leveling, and you're like, yeah, I'm so much more powerful now. Frenzies are awesome. And it's like, oh wow, it doesn't actually
I'll generate them eventually.
I one way at some point I'll figure out a way to generate frenzy charges.
That node is, I will say that node is really good with what's the heist wand that like just generates charges? Alluring or something?
Accumulating.
No. It's really good with accumulating, and it's also really good with the nodes in Asylum that just like generate charges, because you can take the master, which gives 100% global charge generation, and the Trickster, that's 100% global charges, not specifically frenzy.
Yeah,
and you've got like the Eldritch implicit chests for like stuff, so it's really good for like perma endurance charges and stuff like that.
I did that last league. I had a chest that generated like the 1 charge every 12 seconds or whatever like that, or 18 seconds or something like that. So like you would just generate it and then expire, generate and expire. But yeah, I picked up that mastery, which gives you like 100% duration or something, and then it's just perma full endurance charges. Feels pretty good. So yeah, you can probably do that with friendly charges with that duration helping that.
I think my final thoughts on the Trickster is I wouldn't be surprised if it was the best Gauntlet Ascendancy. Like it just reminds me very much of Champion. Like there are some people who say Champion is the best, and it's like I totally get it. There's so much defenses, It's like literally solves so many problems for you. And the fact that Trickster has all the energy shield evasion stuff on top of being right next to the Ghost Shrouds, and as I understand, I've never taken that node, I'll be honest. As I understand, that's one of the best defensive keystones on
It's
the
really
entire
good.
trade.
How have you never taken it?
Yeah,
It's just like 1 point, your build is tanky. Like what?
I only play Gladiator and Ranger, I'll be honest.
Oh, you've only played like
and-
Corrupting Fever for like 4 leagues.
and
haven't you?
and yeah, since that came out. But yeah, I think probably the biggest problem would be the damage for the Trickster, because as much as everyone says like polymath is like busted, it's really not. Because like if you look at Scion, something that doesn't really have a whole lot of damage, like one skill point, it's like the equivalent of like 2 to 3% more damage, right? Like just from getting one skill point. So it's like it's not that crazy when you consider the damage compared to like +2 projectiles or Inquisitor,
Yeah.
right? It's definitely very defensively geared.
Wait, there's a node that's just called Inquisitor. I want that node.
It's
Yeah,
cool.
I mean,
You
it's
my favorite
busted.
node.
damage, you turn on Righteous Fire, and you win the game.
You have Inquisitor.
You've allocated Inquisitor.
I will
Yeah.
say the new Scion Trickster node is pretty fucking sexy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
good.
I think Scion's kind of underrated.
Isn't that going to be like the new like go-to minion Ascendancy now? Isn't it?
No idea.
I think everyone's gonna swap between that and Guardian. I think.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. But I mean, yeah, Scion's really busted. Like, the other point I wanted to make is that going for, at least from a softcore trade perspective, going for the Trickster, you're actually disincentivized from using clusters, because you
Yes.
obviously want to maximize the amount of masteries you want, and clusters are generally vastly more powerful in a trade league setting. So just saying.
I'm glad you said that, because that was what initially made me excited for it from an SSF point of view, because there's a lot of times I play a build, I'm like, if I have all my clusters, great, but you don't have access to it. So that's also that weird thing with Trickster where it's kind of like, it doesn't come online early, so it's a more of a late scaling Ascendancy, but then you don't want to use clusters, which are like a super late game thing. So it's kind of in this weird sort of nebulous. I think if Molten Shell was changed as well, I think that's the main issue I have with the meta generally, is the fact that whenever I play a build which doesn't have armor, it's not so much the armor I miss, it's just how broken Molten Shell is.
That feels busted.
It's so dumb. It's so fucking good.
I think I still like. I've been planning out POBs for Tricksters, a lot of them, and I still have POBs with like 2 larges that have 7 to 9 masteries, which I think still makes Polymath a pretty solid node on top of the recover you get on kill, which basically makes you pseudo immortal while mapping.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's like you just don't use clusters. You can definitely still use them. At least the way I've mapped out my builds. Maybe my builds are trash though.
Oh no, but like if you like are in a world in which you don't have clusters, I believe Trickster is probably like comparatively more powerful in that setting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Since we've
AKA Gauntlet.
Since we've kind of touched on it, before we move on to something else, what do we expect like the meta to look like? A lot of people are saying it's just gonna be a repeat of the 318 meta. Do you think it's gonna be wildly different, or?
I've heard some new stuff floating around, like the more of mischief and the poison totems and stuff like that. So I think there's probably going to be some newcomers, but I imagine most of the old guard will stick around, with the exception of Seismic.
You mean Seismic will stick around, but DD's gone? What do you mean?
No, like I was saying, like most builds will probably stick around, but Seismic is probably not going to stick around, from what I understand.
Seismic is
really?
still good. You just wear 2 Ming's
okay.
heart. It's
gonna-
like
Oh,
fuck
okay,
you, just like
I
2
was
Ming's
waiting
heart.
to
Let's
bring
go.
up the double Ming's heart
Yeah.
Seismic.
Fair enough.
Damage.
Ming's is so
Minus
disgusting.
50% HP.
Well,
Let's go.
that's the thing, is Ming's gives you so much damage that it's just the life nodes
Yeah,
just
HP.
become damage nodes. So it's like,
I mean, if
So
the boss is dead, you don't need to, be defensive because the boss is already dead. So you don't need HP anyways.
Nice.
I love the Ming's change. It reminds me of Ming's Heart in the good olden days of PoE. Back in the day, like Ming's Heart was a pretty significant unique. Like it was like, this is a lot of power for a lot of cost. Like you're losing HP. We can't afford it. We all have 400% HP on our trees. We can't afford to throw away
6%.
whatever it took away for its bit of extra damage.
I
So I like
remember
that they've,
playing Duo back in the day, and my friend was doing like face tank BV with double Ming's Heart, and I'm like, you are an absolute lunatic. This was in hardcore. He's like, my damage is so good. And there was a week where I was playing with him, like, wow, this guy's build is so good. And then he died. I'm like, no, that was a mistake. He shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like the unique changes. A lot of the unique changes, actually. We're going to talk uniques.
Yeah, that was going to be the segue. It was 318. So, Ziggy, what are your like favorite uniques at the moment?
Yeah, I haven't actually forgot to have a glance back over the new uniques, but some of them look good. But I guess we'll get onto that one. So I guess start with changed uniques.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good ones. There's a few in there. There's a few little head scratches, and definitely, like I mentioned in the Q&A with Chris, like the absence of some is very much felt. So I'm very sad to see like Voltaxic, well, technically made it on the list, but not in a good way. And so yeah, there's a few pieces there. We didn't get like some of the old chase two-handed melee weapons, for example. Didn't get any love. There's no like buffs for Hedgies or the Aziri axe or lightning shaper axe sword thing.
Wait,
whatever
hang
it's
on.
called.
That's really. Did you just list a bunch of melee weapons that didn't see any
I
improvements?
did just list a bunch of melee weapons.
That's strange.
Oh, the
Should
melee
we get
player.
should we get a melee chant starting in chat again? Just like during the Q&A? Just melee. But so the absence of some is keenly felt. But given what people were memeing about when they announced they were buffing 100 uniques or changing 100 uniques, everyone was like, "Oh yeah, here we go. There's gonna be nothing good in there," you know. Which is fair. We've had that happen in the past. This time we actually got a lot of cool changes.
Yeah.
So here's some of the. I just made a very short list of some things that stood out. Clay Shaper looks super strong. It was already really strong and it got buffed. Don't know how that happened, but also like Necromancer got nerfed, right? But Golems, more Golems got buffed, and then Clay Shaper got buffed. Elementalist didn't get nerfed, so that looks kind of good. Crown of the Pale King, Bramblejack Reflect Leech, obviously. That's the that's probably the new meta. You were just asking about the meta.
That's good for your Tempest Shield build, right, Lance? Stack all the Reflect uniques.
My Tempest Shield build does not use that actually. That's, believe it or not, it didn't make the cut. It was close though.
It's like they buffed it from like 3 reflect damage to 10,000 reflect damage, and then gave it like 10,000% leech off reflect damage.
You can't scale. One of the back when I was first playing like D3, I thought Thorn's builds were so cool conceptually. So it always does make me sad that you can't scale Reflect in PoE, because I thought that'd be like, you know, that'd be another cool build mechanic you could scale into, but you just can't.
Yeah, that's obviously a meme answer from me on that particular list item, but I mean, someone's gonna stand there against a certain boss, whacking them with attacks, taking reflect damage, whatever. Is there a melee boss? Is there a boss that barrages you in melee or something with attacks specifically in PoE? I can't think of any, but maybe there is one. Anyway,
bow skill. I don't know.
Death Rush looks really cool for mapping. You know, it's what was it again? It's got like 5% HP on kill, and shit, was it adrenaline? I can't remember. I should have wrote down the
Adrenaline. Yep.
Yeah, I was like, that's sick. that's good. That's a good mapping item right there. I like that. Kintsugi got buffed for Tricksters. We were just talking about
Why
Trickster.
did they take the life off it?
It's weird. It's weird because like the net effective HP probably goes up, I imagine, but you're already struggling so much for life, and it makes the downsides even more downsidey. So
Yeah.
I question mark about that change for life evasion builds, but for evasion to ES Tricksters, that's a nice little buff there. It's cool to see some old items. Kind of, I like the approach that they took of really just like honing in on some of the old items, like we talked about Ming's Heart, for example, but also Lightning Curl. You know, just taking the core concept and trimming a little bit of fat off here and there, and then focusing on making those things better.
I mean, Lightning Coils. Cool. I suppose it has the armor evasion going for it, but I was kind of disappointed by Lightning Coil after seeing Cloak of Flame, because Cloak of Flame works on dots, which is hype. And then Cloak has downside and it's only 10% more, which is still a lot, but it's like dots though.
Relicash's impatience look really fun. So they took that from like a kind of a bit of a meme-ish item. We have to. It's funny because like everyone's like talking about in other contexts this idea of like it was the Arctic armor change, for example. It's like the problem with Arctic armor is that it only provides defense when you stand still. So we have buffed the defense when you stand still, and you're like, well, I'll tell you a good way to stay alive: don't stand still. But Ralakash is a little different because now it gives you full charges instantly whenever you stop to attack or cast, and that's actually pretty good. That it gives you the damage when you need it and the defense when you need it, and then it just turns off straight away. And there's maybe some fun shenanigans there with gaining and losing charges. Maybe, I don't know. Do you actually gain, or is it you go to full? I can't remember.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure if it counts as gaining.
Let me check. Lose all frenzy charges. So it says specifically lose and gain. Oh wait, hold on. That's the old version. Let me hold on. Let me full screen this. No, yeah, so you don't gain at any point because it's your minimum is equal to your maximum. But you do lose all frenzy endurance charges when you move. So anything that interacts with losing charges could work.
Yep.
So I think there's some stuff you can do with that maybe. But anyway, even just without any combos, just going to max charges when you stand still is really cool. So I quite like that. And yeah, everyone's talking about Sunblast. Do you need like what do you need to make that work? Because like the delay stuff seems awkward to me.
Right, can I talk about Sunblast as someone who has played traps for fucking forever? And there's loads of hype around Sunblast, and I get it. And I know this is going to be clipped in like a week's time when someone like deletes a boss and like, Tarke, you're a fucking moron. Ugh. But like, Sunblast is a really nice small multi now, but I feel like people have completely the wrong idea about how that belt functions because they've played builds like Explosive Arrow Totems stuff. So basically what the new Sunblast does is you throw like 3 more additional traps, so it's like a massive multiplier. You don't need to use like Cluster Trap or Swift Assembly or something. Your traps are no longer triggered, but it has like a 1-second delay on it. And then it triggers by itself. Seems really strong. If you're using a auto-targeting trap, it's nuts. Really, really strong. If you're... Oh, they've already changed it down to 2. Okay, so they've already nerfed it. Brilliant. If you're using...
My damage!
Yeah, if you're using anything which is like an AoE-based trap, so Ice Trap, Explosive Trap, CaptainLance, you did a Blade Trap or something, then this is what happens. You throw the trap, so it takes like a second for your trap to fly through the air, land on the floor, arm, and then like another second later, it then detonates. Which point the monster is nowhere near where you threw that trap. So I only really see it being like fun to play with if you're doing like Lightning Trap, Spark Trap, I have Winter, like something which just has nuts coverage because then it doesn't matter. But yeah, for like your base AoE things, it will feel really painful against anything that moves. And that's most things in the game like to move.
Ooh, okay. There's no way to, get around that delay there.
No, and that's the thing is like it seems like it's a really big bait because there's a lot of people like, oh, but I played Explosive Arrow and that had a delay. The difference being is like you drop the totem attacks the mob and then it's on the mob and then it boom. But with this would be a situation of like you throw your ice traps or explosive traps and maybe like only 1 or 2 of them hit the mob after they've moved, at which point you've lost most of your multi because it's like exploded in the wrong direction. And they've removed all the sources of like cheap constructions. I'm pretty sure they got it off Cluster Jewels as well. As far as I'm aware, they've removed all the sources. So yeah, I was very annoyed by that change because the like instant grenade traps used to be a playstyle which no longer exists. And they're like, we have to get rid of that because we made this busted belt. And now they've like nerfed the belt multiple times. And the belt reduced duration is quite a large roll. If I remember correctly, it's 50 to 75. And it's like, we're gonna fucking divine it, like, you know what I mean? So there's like so many steps. It's like, nah.
In the roll's defense, that's quite a common belt, but yeah.
Well, we don't know how common it is now because they've changed all the uniques.
What does that mean?
True, that's very true. Well, at least from my neck of the woods, the unique everyone's talking about is the Covenant. Everyone is losing their mind over that one. Apparently, it's the new hot thing. Does anyone have any info on that?
Covenant is why I kind of want to play some poisony things, because if that dropped, I'm popping the fuck off with that added chaos. Same with Thunderfist. There's Covenant, Thunderfist, and there's one other as well, which doesn't just do like a crazy added damage gem, and you're like, yeah. Or is it just those two?
I just think it's Covenant and Thunderfist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think someone said the Covenant was like 50% more damage for like, most poison skills or something like that. It's
It's
crazy.
really strong.
It's basically like an 8-link damage wise because it's worth about it's twice as strong as like added chaos, like awakened.
Oh my
Added
goodness.
6. So it's like 2 really fat flat rolls, and then you just get a weapon that has attack speed, and you're good. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually quite like this approach because GGG, at least in the podcast I did in Expedition, we like the balance of skills. They're all at a baseline, equivalent value, and it's like, okay, well that makes sense. And they've kind of executed on that, and now they've come and buffed uniques, hopefully to change up the meta. So I'm hoping, like the change to Covenant or like Obliteration or Ming's Heart actually does, rise up, with some new builds. I think it's a pretty interesting approach.
Yeah.
if we're still talking about change uniques we like, this is one. I think one of the most busted ones is actually Diala's, and I think I saw a video Palstrom was saying this too. But the ability to put basically a chest that has generically +2 level socketed gems with how it works, with how it'll interact with Empower, plus being able to 30 quality your supports / skills that scale with quality, and you just put 6 sockets on it, you throw it in the double corrupt, and you just keep doing that until you hit like a GG double corrupt. That chest is going to lead to some insane amounts of damage, where you just have to compensate for your defense on other gear pieces type of thing.
That one, in my opinion, is the new Skin of the Loyal, actually. I think people are going to use that instead of Skin.
Yeah.
I'm going to comment on what the uniques are for people who can't see them or haven't looked at them. I've linked in chat a document with all the uniques to look at, but Diala's got changed to have red socketed gems in it have +2 level, and green socketed gems have 30% quality, and blue sockets get 100% XP. No one cares about.
For what it's worth, I actually didn't understand this initially. You can put any color gem in any socket.
You don't need to respect the colors.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a pretty important point.
I totally missed that part. What the?
It's the most important part of the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that part.
So you can make any support gem have the quality, and you can make any active skill gem have the plus level.
Oh, that's even better than I thought. Wow.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Actually, it's really powerful.
It's a cool item because the colors still matter, so you want to recolor, but not in the conventional restrictive way.
So it should be really easy to recolor.
Yeah, but what makes it really busted is because obviously, I mean, for the rich boys, you can get an Ashes of the Stars, and suddenly you're starting to approach absolutely obscene levels of quality on a given skill gem. Yeah, and you can do some really disgusting stuff. I think someone was pointing out the Archmage support. You can get 100% of mana cost as cold, added cold damage. It's what the? That's someone's gonna come up with something crazy there.
So with enhance, you can get over 100 quality. How much?
Because you can get all the way up to, if you have awakened enhance, you're getting up to, I believe it's 130 quality. Maybe more.
So the whole thing about quality in this game only goes up to 20%.
You can crop targeted gems, so it's 138, I think.
So now we can just go beyond that.
You can get 23 quality. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy.
Since you've got the document there, my favorite unique, just because who the fuck did this change? Could you Control F Rainbow Stride for me, ZiggyD?
Yeah, so Rainbow Stride, for context, was the classic go-to, this is better than most rares available on the market for the first 2 weeks for energy shield builds because it has movement speed, lots of energy shield, and lots of resistances. So I can see why they changed it based on that, but what they did was they buffed the spell block on it a lot, completely got rid of the energy shield,
nerfed the movement speed.
Nerfed the movement speed. It's still got the resist, so now it's
it's dog shit.
What made it weird at series steppy sort of.
What made it even worse, right, is if you compare that to something like Sapphal's Frame, they actually crazy buff the spell block on Sapphal's Frame, and it's I think they gave Rainbow Stride, I believe, 14% spell block in the buff.
Oh.
And then removed all the ES, took off 5% movement speed, and it's who cares?
Yeah, they kind of gutted that one. That's an understandable item to nerf because it's one of those classic it's just a rare but a lot better kind of items.
I mean, if we were
So-
like 4 years ago, but like, what rare is that better than now? Like, that's what I don't understand. Is like, when would you ever use
Well,
it?
it sets the bar for rare boots to reach quite high for generic rares. Yes.
I feel like I could get a better item than Rainbow Stride pre-nerf just by using Zeal essences on boots
Yeah.
and crafting a mod.
Probably.
Like
Yeah,
5,
Probably.
maybe 2.
Yeah, I
And
don't
it's
know.
just the thing is
well-
like, it's so weird when they have that and you compare it to something like the new shield, Emperor's Vigilance, where it's like 1,000% armor and energy shield, and you're like, okay, what?
Isn't that one really hard to get though? It's like from lab only, right?
Wait, is it really?
Didn't they get rid of the lab ones?
Oh, I'm not sure. I actually don't know. I know it's like got the lab art, so I assumed it was from lab. I've
Wait,
never
is this-
seen
It's
the
a
I would
random
art.
be-
drop. Yeah,
Well,
it's
like,
global drop. Yeah,
Like,
I get it in
complete base
SSF
is
all the time.
actually so rare, but before no one used it, so that's why it was cheap. But it's actually rare, so it's actually going to be expensive.
I've gotten that shield, I want to say, every league in SSF, and it's not like I'm someone who plays like 3 months of the league. You know, I play like the first month, so I don't think it's
This
that
is-
insanely rare.
It's probably just hidden on my filter. Yikes.
Yeah.
Oh well. One thing I don't
Wonder
like though.
why.
One thing I don't like about the uniques is they removed a bunch of faded uniques, and one specifically was actually like super duper used, and they just dumpster tiered it,
Frostverno?
and that was not specifically that one, but the Hiri's Demise, the
Yeah.
deck stacker one. It's just like gone. They removed it.
Yeah, faded uniques,
Yep,
rest
gone.
in peace.
The
Just,
demise one
it's
is
been
sad.
weird.
It was one thing which was funny about that is I can't remember who it was, but I was watching a random like 319 starter build video. This guy did this really cool like ballista build, and he's like, "This build hasn't been nerfed at all." Everyone's like, "Dude, you lost your quiver." He's like, yeah, maybe that's a slight nerf to the build." It's like, really, a slight? Like, come on, like.
Yeah, that quiver was busted. It was like really good when you were just starting out on a bird character,
Yeah.
especially as a ranger because you had so much dexterity. It's really a big loss. Everything else is good though.
We haven't seen the new quiver yet, have we?
I don't think so.
Do you think it's going to be good? I don't know why GGG is always a bit weird about making good bow items for some reason. They're always really weird about that.
It's accurate.
I mean, I think it could be good if it's like a leveling global unique, because there's not really a whole lot of good leveling uniques now for bows, for the quiver slot. In the end game though, it's like impossible to actually compete with anything on a high end scale because of like the synthesized stuff and all
Yeah.
that garbage.
Yeah. I mean, you had Void. What is it called? Void Shot, or what was the quiver they completely annihilated?
Void
that one.
Fletch.
Void Fletcher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Void
Yeah.
Fletcher. Yeah.
Oh, what a
so-
fun
Right.
quiver that was.
It was pretty cool actually. I don't know why they lobotomized it.
Yeah. Yeah,
well.
that one's a shame.
Hmm.
That was the quiver that shot out. Vroom, pff,
Nice little purple
explosions, things.
explosion.
It had
Yeah,
a
that was
unique
really
mechanic and a skill tied to it, but yeah, they kind of nerfed it a bunch. Another
Yeah.
buffed item, Duresso's Courage was.
I
the
used that last
shield
league. That was good.
It was a great shield for any sort of like petrified blood, low lifey stuff. It got a bit of a resurgence as like a very powerful starter item for when they changed how low life worked to 50% and everything. So just for context, it does a whole bunch of stuff, but it's got like spell block on low life, and then it's got like a kind of you gain attack block if you block a spell, and spell block if you block an attack kind of thing. So that was like 20% before. They made that 100%. So as well as buffing the armor and evasion, I believe. I think they took off some physical damage, but it doesn't really matter for this item.
Yeah.
Buff the resistances, the mega buff to the blocks. So I took that from a already really good starter item to an excellent starter item that, I don't know, maybe you just won't swap off because it is blocking a can. Although that mechanic does have you run into the occasional situation where you're fighting a boss that doesn't do attacks or doesn't do spells, and then you lose half of your block mechanic. And
So I played with that last league. It's a really
Doesn't
strong
matter in that
item,
case.
and I think Lance, you'll be able to agree with me on this. I feel like people have this very weird notion with defenses. I've seen a lot of the same conversation around Heartstopper. The idea is that stuff like that and stuff like Heartstopper it's just passive mitigation. You're not meant to purposely be like, oh, I can stand in all the slams now. Like, you're still meant to play the video game. It's one of those things, if that's just passively making you substantially tankier, especially when it comes to like mapping and stuff like that. And I feel like people have this weird notion with a lot of mechanics in PoE where it's like, if it doesn't do what it wants you to 100% of the time, like, it's completely garbage. and just passively mitigating loads of damage is really, really strong. Yeah, you shouldn't just be purposely standing in absolutely everything. Yeah, because like
It
Heartstopper,
saves you when you don't know about it, so you
Exactly.
don't realize that's what saved you, right? So it doesn't get the credit if it saves you.
yeah. There are so many. It was the same issue because I used to always play. Grimro, you can attest this. I used to always play dodge cat builds, and people are like, oh, dodge is dog shit, and it's just because they don't know how many times it's actually saved them. Conditional defenses are strong. You just make sure it's not your only defense. You layer your defenses.
Yeah.
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 Specifically for Heartstopper, I think I mostly agree, but I think the way I'm looking at it, for example, I'm playing Righteous Fire. I am planning on standing still and having the boss hit me. And for me, it's 100% it's mitigation the entire time, because either the boss is hitting me and it's dealing less damage, or Righteous Fire is dealing less damage. So 100% of the time, it's mitigation, even though it's okay. It's not mitigating the boss. So it's not working. No, but it's mitigating the dot. So it's giving me mitigation the entire time. But that's Righteous Fire specifically. Whereas other builds where you're not like that, it doesn't quite feel as good necessarily, and it's just going to be a case where it saves you when you don't know it, type of thing.
I think also for Heartstopper specifically, it's very rare these days that you have a boss where it's like is only doing one thing or the other. There's lots of just like passive degens all over the floor, loads of hits coming in, or like one Shaper Bee bolt, an Elder Stamina, this and that and the other, you know. Yeah. But Dress's Courage is lit.
Yeah. I think it's good for mapping. I don't know about bossing. I'm just picturing Cyriax arc, and it's like, I don't think I'm gonna survive a hit if I get hit once. But yeah, for mapping, it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with that.
We've circled around it a little bit, unless anyone has any last unique thing to shout out. Do you want to talk about any league starters your guys potentially thinking about?
I think we already talked about mine. I'm probably going to do Righteous Fire Inquisitor. And I think, are you doing Righteous Fire Trickster? Are you,
Yeah.
Lance?
Inquisitor is the
That's a good-
correct decision. Okay? if you're planning to league start Righteous Fire, Inquisitor is the correct decision. I just want to put this out here, get in front of it before I league start Trickster, and then everybody says like, Lance baited me into Trickster. I just want to say, I know Inquisitor is better at league start. Okay, I am pretty confident when I get to Energy Shield, I'll be able to one up Inquisitor. But I'm compensating my league start to have a worse league start. Okay, just league start Inquisitor if you're doing Righteous Fire. That's all I'm saying. That's it.
I had a look at Pox's Righteous Fire. I knew Pox was kind of like one of the go-tos for some Righteous Fire Inquisitor build action, but I didn't know to what extent that guy's really been cracking it on the build guide action. He's got individual characters for like each different level breakpoint, so that he can like jump into the campaign and show you at each point, how it plays and what to do and how to progress. And he's written out full descriptions of the mechanics and everything on each of the items, and it's got full on breakdowns. It's like some next level stuff in the Path of Building department for build
making the
guides.
rest of us build makers look bad, so I need him to stop.
Yeah,
he's really like taking the quality up a notch, and I just don't have the time. So if he could stop doing that to make the rest of us not look so bad, that'd be cool.
No, it's really easy, Lance. You just need to Control C, Control V, and then just change every instance of Inquisitor to Trickster, and you'll be fine. No one will notice.
He's got his own Righteous Fire wiki, apparently. It's just dedication to one build. I love to see it. So good on him, and I'm gonna have him hold my hand gently, because I'm planning on playing hardcore for the first time in ages.
Oh my goodness.
Hardcore trade. It's basically a free private league, so that's what I'm going to treat it as. If anyone wants to come play in my private league, I've named it Hardcore Trade. You can all get in for free.
And people said we didn't have hardcore representation on the podcast.
I have to fill in. I have to fill in after the other guys are gone. So there we go.
I was very shocked when I heard that Amy was going to play SSF. I'm like, wait, what the fuck? I thought things were going well. Why are they no longer the duo team? What's happened?
I know that was the hardest part of our decision. I just, after last league, not really like enjoying myself that much with Archnem, I decided to like, lean into it a little bit and change my pace and gameplay style and approach and goals and everything like that. So I thought like making a big change, like going to hardcore trade, probably would be something to try.
No, I think you'll
something
have
to
fun with it.
experience,
I think you'll
and
have fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a go. The biggest bummer is that I won't be able to play co-op with Amy this time. But she's gonna try some solo self-found. So she's messing around with something different too.
Yeah, that's gonna be a buff. I think she's gonna have a lot more fun in SF than you're gonna have in hardcore, but still, I think you'll have fun.
Probably.
So Grim, what are you doing? Corrupting Fever again?
Okay, look, just to get out of the way, I have a duty to perform. I am the league figure outer person. So my goal is always just to figure out the league mechanic as fast as possible to get it all out there. So I'm never really too worried about what build I'm playing. I'll just play the same thing every time, and I focus all my energy like on trying to figure out what's new and in front of me. So yes, I am playing the same build again. I'm playing Corrupting Fever.
Nice.
Just to get it out of the way. But,
That took a long time to say yes, Grim.
Come on, did I have to explain it? Otherwise, I'll just get made fun of.
Context.
Everyone tease me. No.
That was funny because usually it's me trying to explain why actually this Corsico build is totally different to my last Corsico build. Yeah.
Your
In my
15th
defense,
variant.
I will be playing a different endgame build this time. So yeah.
Spoilers, or are you keeping that to yourself?
I haven't really decided yet because I need to see the new bases. There's a lot of really crazy things you can do with those duration bases. And also there's the new gloves that got revealed today, which there's definitely some possibilities with those gloves in the end game. And of course we have ultimatum uniques coming back. So maybe there's something going on there. I think the end game should look a little bit different this time. I'll just say that.
Context for new gloves. Calm got a pair of gloves finally. Supporter made unique, so someone decided to try and round out Calm's set of gear with a very fun new pair of gloves that generate rage based on regen. They stop your regen from applying to your health and generate rage instead. They look good. They look real good.
Yeah, I think they look very, very powerful. Rage is very broken, very, very broken, and obviously there's Rage Vortex, which someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that build focused on the Chainbreaker jewel and had to get like mana, increased mana generation or whatever, and these gloves basically just solve all that.
Wasn't
from
that
what I
post
understand.
Chainbreaker? The whole Rage Vortex thing? I feel like the Chainbreaker
know.
change happened a while ago. I don't know. But Rage Vortex is
All
good.
all I remember is people getting increased mana regeneration on Rage Vortex, and I was like, oh, okay, you can use those gloves to fix that. But yeah, I'm sure someone will correct me.
I'm really struggling picking my league starter, so I was going to just do like my Silent Trapper start, and when I saw they buffed Rosso's Courage, I'm like, yeah, let's go for that because I really enjoyed it last league. But I made the mistake of saying I'm going to play something outside of my wheelhouse. I'll play one of the exciting new skills, and then the new skills came out, and they were not very exciting. So yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm thinking about maybe doing something poisony because then I can be like, I'm trying out the new alchemical mark, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. If you were to ask me right now, I'd probably say that I'm gonna do a Nightblade Poison Spectral Helix Assassin because I haven't played that, and that's like a good build. Otherwise, it'd be like Poison's Concoction Pathfinder to maybe transition into like a Scourge Arrow thing if I got a good bow for it. But I don't know, I'm kind of hoping that in the next couple of days, either something will get announced or someone will post like a really cool like Trickster video or something, and I'll be like, because yeah, I've tried making a lot of interesting Trickster POBs, and I'm always like, I should probably just make this in Quiz. That's the annoying thing. I'm hoping someone comes up with a really cool EB Mom build because I think EB Mom is very good for this league. But
just to give you a bit of my research, so I've been looking around. I always try and figure out what like all the new stuff is, and the things which I haven't seen before, which well at least me, maybe they have been around for a while, is Spark. Seems to be a very good league starter.
Spark's been a thing for a couple of leagues now, Grim. But yeah.
Okay, dude.
He was planning out his Corrupting Fever, Tarke, okay?
Yeah.
He had other things to do.
Everyone's hyping that one up. At least I hadn't seen that before. More of Mischief seems to be
that was
good,
already a good build, but yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, hell yeah. And then Poison seems to be making a massive resurgence. Both Bladefall, Blade Blast, Blade Vortex, not sure about that one. And then the totems, the Scourge Arrow totems.
Yeah, that was... People were talking about that, I want to say like 317. And then... yeah. Like, again, it's not your fault, because generally what tends to happen with these sort of things is like one person will play it on like PB Ninja, And then I want to say it was Palstrin who made a video for 317 talking about it, because It's Real Nito did a poison Caustic Arrow ballista build in a gauntlet like a year or so ago. What tends to happen a lot of the times is like one person plays a build, people go, oh, that's cool, but like these are the obvious like seismic traps or whatever, and then it's when those obvious picks go away, those like background builds shoot up.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like, these are just ones which I hadn't heard about before. So like,
Yeah.
if I haven't heard about them, they're probably not the meta yet,
Yeah.
right? And then like as like speculative or like kind of like not quite meta, there's like the new Summon Raging Spirits. Seen people
Yeah.
talking about that. Soul Rest got a buff, so people are excited
Mhm.
about that. Especially with the new jewels. You know the jewels. What are they called?
Grand
I don't know.
Spectrums.
Yeah, that's it. And then people still saying skeletons are still good, and then obviously golems. So it seems like summoners are actually potentially like pretty powerful now. I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe as if they weren't already powerful enough. And then all the usual candidates like Bane, Soul Rend. I'm surprised they're not playing Soul Rend, Tarke.
Soul Rend's pretty lit. Soul Rend is what I was gonna go for, but I felt like I was gonna get shouted at because that's basically just fucking Caustic Arrow. But maybe I could get away with playing Soul Rend. Soul Rend looks really good.
It's different. I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a spell. Caustic Arrow is an attack.
Wait, it is? Cool.
It says on the gem it is.
Yeah. Also, I have to say, fuck playing Caustic Arrow in SSF with the Divine Change. Meta-modding bows and shit. That Divine Change is so scary for SSF meta mods.
Does it change how like you were just finding the same amount of exalts though in the past, right? Or were you farming specifically exalt div cards in SSF to do those drafts?
Well, no, because the difference sort of was it was one of those things of I would regularly kind of like build up a stockpile of like 10 exalts, and it's like, cool, I have those kind of in the bank that I can use this thing. I've always found more exalts than divines. I've always felt like divines are rarer. I know that GG says they had the same drop rate, but I've always had like more exalts. And it's just a thing of like, you would passively be building exalts without thinking about it because of shards. And then it's like every now and again you might get like a div card which gives you like 3 or 4. And not having any of that for divines. 100%.
What's that?
Well, no. I think like the exalt shards is one of those things that people don't think about. It's just like you passively just build up exalts naturally in the background where you're not playing.
I reckon divines were far less valuable in your mind, so you didn't really place the same emphasis on them. Thus you not really think about how.
I would disagree. I would disagree because divines are quite big in SSF when it comes to like rerolling uniques and stuff. I think maybe the main difference would be is I probably didn't have like stockpiles of them because when I got them, I would use them on like Timeless Jewels. Timeless Jewels are gonna be rough as well. Do we
want to actually quickly talk about that? Because I think this is actually probably the biggest change for the league, the divine change.
I think it is going to be massive. I think it's going to be really big.
Yeah, because as you said, there's no divination cards, there's no shards.
Well, there's one, but it only drops from Dominus, I believe.
Okay.
And there's only one Dominus map, so like,
you can't even magic find
baby.
Yeah. Well, okay. Close to none. So they're going to be significantly rarer. The best ways to acquire them are heist and expedition, and like even then it's a little bit tough. And if they're replacing the exalted orb, you basically cannot use them on uniques anymore. And we've lost the bestiary reforge, we've lost the betrayal reforge, and you guys say that the harvest one's probably gone.
Yeah,
if they took out bestiary, they're taking out harvest. Come on, there's no way.
I mean. Yeah, that's pretty worrying because like your uniques, everything you get is basically permanently at those stats unless you are literally insanely rich. You're not going to be divining anything but like high tier mirror items or something like that. Like spam divining, that is.
I think the uniques you divined before are mostly the same uniques you're going to be divining. I think a large majority of the uniques that are common were the ones you bought with good rolls anyways for Trade League, not for SSF. SSF completely you're screwed, right? But for Trade League, the ones that drop good rolls, you now make money on those, whereas previously you didn't. And you also go buy the good rolled ones. Or if they're common enough, they won't demand a high enough price based on their good roll because there's so many in the market.
There is also, for Trade League, to consider the 3-to-1 recipe, which means that even low roll ones will have some value because you can vendor 3 to get a new one back.
Yeah.
And I could also see
Yeah.
a big thing of people selling un-ID'd uniques in Trade League.
Certainly, yeah. That's definitely something that probably will happen. It's a little bit concerning though, right? Because like if you buy an Ash of the Stars, it's like a 50 Exalt amulet. It takes 40 divines to get a perfect one. Well, now your amulet's 90 Exalts. It's like,
That
well,
40,
mean
I
90
think,
divines?
isn't it like 100 divines or something? It's worse.
something stupid, right? And despite what Lance says, I actually don't believe it'll be more profitable to boss. I believe it's going to be even worse because if you drop a low roll, like who wants that? No one wants that. It's only the very highest rolls that people are going to want. So it's going to be even more RNG to farm bosses.
So
now
that's why
because
you only
need to
sell
get a
them on
good roll.
ID.
So is that an
Yeah, well-
argument for Ashes is cheap and affordable now for people?
Sure, you can interpret it that way. I think buying a bad roll one will be significantly cheaper. Yes.
It
I'm
will
not saying bossing gets better because of the unique change. I'm saying you're running a map. You drop some random unique, say it's a Carcass Jack or something with a decent roll on it, and now early league that's like big money or something. Carcass Jack's probably not a good example, but my point is there are uniques that are like specific, like the best in slot unique for certain builds, and the good rolls of that were previously would have been who cares, worthless. Now sell to that market of people using that unique.
Agreed.
I
saying
reckon that's that's kind of the flip side of this, and the part I like about unique drops mattering a bit more because you can't just divine spam them, for free basically. Is that like 90% of the one elk uniques will all of a sudden, if they drop with good rolls, be worth something.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be fun occasionally when we get one of those drops.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I wouldn't underestimate the hit to player power for builds that use a significant amount of uniques, though, that will be a result of this, right? If you're not using
you
like
could,
high
there's
rolls,
probably a way of quantifying that across the board, like everyone's 10% weaker on average or something like that because of roll variance on uniques just being on average lower.
I mean,
But
not even
it's
uniques,
not-
just on like you're
Yeah, it's not just
crafting your
that
own
either, yeah.
weapon, like you craft your bow and you low roll on your like Ellie rolls. Like,
yeah. If they remove the harvest one, it's gonna be bad for getting like high rolls. Like, would you actually sit there and roll your big crazy item and then shit, divines a 400C? Guess I'm starting again. Would you do that?
I think
Just
on
to
like
try and get a
I
better
think
roll?
if you were doing like
You
alt
wouldn't start again
rolling,
at 400C.
if you're starting at like an alt regal blah blah blah, if you hit the low end, I think you probably just roll over it. I don't know.
Yeah, like just here's another example. Let's say you're alteration spamming the deck stacking modifier or something like that on your boat, and you hit min roll. Do you just pump another 2,000 alterations? Like, bruh, come on!
This is a buff to
It's just a few more
RSI.
clicks, Grim. It'll be fine. Don't think about it too much.
No.
See,
On the
go on, Ziggy.
another flip side is, are we gonna right click some exalts now? If they're only like 10 cows or something,
Yeah.
we're gonna right click some 4 property items and turn them into 6 property items. That's kind of cool.
If they're 30 to
Yeah.
50C, I think they'll be usable 100%.
I think if they're under 20C, I'll use them on jewels. I'm almost certain Empyrean's team is going to use them on maps because they already use the bestiary craft, so they'll be exalting the maps. Actually, hang on, Beyond's gone. Ooh, I don't know how that's going to work out now.
See, I was gonna say I think the divine change is interesting. I'm worried about it from an SF point of view, but it's the sort of thing which will make this league very different, so I don't mind it. The thing which fucks me off about it, and this is a throwback, Ziggy, I don't like the whole perfect armor bullshit. And if you remember, I was really anti the perfect armor change, and that's the whole thing of like, when an item drops, it's got like a 20% increased roll on it. That, plus this divine thing on like certain uniques is going to feel so terrible. It's like, you drop a unique chest piece or shield where it really matters about like its armor roll or whatever, and then it's like, oh, it max rolled its actual like stat roll, but it bottom rolled on the armor roll, so it feels like shit, or like you get the opposite. And I think there's just too many levels, and it does lean very much into like an ancient item PoE situation where it's like, oh sick, I dropped the item, and you're like, oh actually no, it's shit because it low rolled.
Well, then you have an upgrade to aim for.
Fuck off! No,
I think this is a bit different to the armor thing because hands up who forgot about that being a thing. I forgot. I completely forgot about it. It's hidden and no one even notices it.
I notice
it's just 10% more on average, right? But who cares?
Well, no, it's not. No, I don't think you can say who cares when how powerful like shit like armor is. It's such a massive difference having 20% on like all of your pieces. I'm surprised. I feel like that. I feel like that'd be the sort of thing like the trade league peeps would be like really into.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I
I think you have
guess.
to really care about min-maxing to press alt and have it bother you. Or at least, I don't know. I mean, I min-max builds decently, and I usually don't Sacred Orb my items ever.
Really depends what you're focusing on. If you're like an energy shield stacker, right, and it's like really important to you, then I imagine you would use Sacred Orbs on all your gear because you're like, oh, I can get 11,000 now instead of 10,000. But like if you're saying like, oh, would you divine your bow or would you use Blessed Orbs to get like a higher damage roll into my weapon? Yeah, I would because that's something that is really important to me. But yeah, the armor is like it's like okay, whatever.
I find it really weird that like the SSF player is the only one who's like, oh, I hate that, and you all goes like, well, no, like,
No. I don't know.
all right. Okay, well, in that case, there's just a couple more things I'd like to talk about. Is there anything fancy you want to do with your Atlas trees this league? I know that Grim and Lance, you said you want to do some harvest stuff. Is there anything else you're kind of like looking into this league?
I mean, I'm going to look into everything, like as I always do, and report anything that is significantly more powerful than it should be, I'm sure. But generally, the go-to strategy for softcore trade to make the most money has just been Alkengo Eldritch Altar farming, and Lake of Kalandra fits a little too well with that not to do it. So that's what I'll be doing with Harvest.
I think I'm going to probably be going into. One of my favorite things about PoE is crafting gear. So I'm always a big fan of going into Essence with the Harvest change. I'm obviously going to spec into that. They're close to each other on the tree. So most likely I'll probably just be going stuff like currency to craft rares plus boss content because that's what I like to do. I like to do some maps, get some currency to craft rares, and then I like to try bosses type of thing. But maybe I'll try Scourge now or New Beyond now because Old Beyond I couldn't do, and so I never took the passives. But now maybe I'll go check it out to see what it's like if my PC can handle it type of thing. Which I think it looks like it's not as spammy, so it should be fine.
Quick question. If the Divine Teardrops are still in, will you use them? Because I never used one, but I know they were expensive in the league.
Divine Teardrops. There are some use cases for them, but every time I used them in Scourge League, I destroyed my items. It didn't go well.
Understandable.
Potentially, they can be gold, but you just delete your item. That's what I did, at least.
Fair enough.
Ziggy?
Well, I'm playing hardcore for like the first time in a year or two, so honestly, I have no idea.
Empty Atlas tree, make it as easy as
kind of
possible.
blind. Maybe, I guess. I'll be focusing on different things to what I usually focus on for sure, but I don't really know how that's going to look yet since it's not something I've done. The Atlas tree didn't exist when last I played hardcore.
That's fair.
Current Atlas didn't exist when last I played hardcore, so it's going to be it's going to be a new game.
Whole new world.
It's exciting.
I'm going to do the very exciting SSF standard thing. I'm going to rush Jun. Jun is really good in SSF. Get your crafts. Also, because again, I keep saying that I think Eldritch Battery is going to be good this league. And just to say why quickly, with the mastery changes and the Divine Blessing thing, EB is a really easy way to get around Divine Blessing. I know that some people want to do stuff where like they stack reduced mana cost on Flask and get around it that way, but obviously you're probably not going to have that stuff in SSF. So yeah, maybe get an early Devouring item and a bunch of essences as always. I will say though, if people thought Archnemesis plus Essence at least that was scary last league, I think it's probably going to be even scarier this league. So I'd maybe be wary about like going crazy on Essence if your build isn't like all that.
Oh no, that's me. Feels bad.
Oh no, that's it. Are we going to get a repeat of? I probably won't do this again. The 6 portal double altar expedition Essence gaming.
Oh no. We'll see. Anything for the currency. Got to get that bag,
Yeah.
But we'll see. That was pretty painful.
Right. So one thing that we completely skipped over before we do our little finishing bit, ExileCon 2 is kind of a thing.
Ooh.
I'm curious on your guys' opinions on this. So I've had this thing with PoE over the last like year, 2 years, where I'm like, I feel like every patch the game's been getting better, but there's been this whole thing of like this mechanic is being held out until whenever PoE 2 launches, and we just didn't really know what was happening there. And I think just the fact that we have this date now, ExileCon 2, PoE 2 beta, is made me feel a lot more like reinvigorated about the game. I don't know if you guys have had that opinion as well, or
It makes it seem like PoE2 is real and
Mm,
not just soon PoE2 will fix everything copium sort of
yeah,
situation, because it's for sure, ExileCon in 1 year. If the beta's releasing then, that means, PoE2 is, realistically within soon and not just who knows when it's going to be sort
yeah.
of thing. So it becomes a little bit more real. That's at least how I feel when they announce that.
I think what'll happen is ExileCon, they'll announce whatever the next league is after ExileCon, and then 1 month into that, the PoE2 beta will start.
Yeah.
So it'll be like 1 month after ExileCon, basically. PoE2 beta will happen. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
And that gives us a pretty firm date for it. Kind of, that's cool.
Oh man, I'm excited. I think like having a date for it, like pretty much, like sometime in 2023 is incredibly exciting. But the main thing I'm like really wondering about is what is the new stuff which we don't already know about. Like I haven't played Path of Exile 2 like you and Tarke have, Ziggy. But
I didn't really get to play it either.
oh,
I was too
true,
busy.
okay.
Yeah.
But
They've
given us
casting races.
Oh, true. They've been giving us hints like, like, oh, just wait until Path of Exile 2 for Melee. Yeah, it's like, what do you mean? What do you mean wait until Path of
They're
Exile
changing
2?
the animation system. Your mind is not going to comprehend what's going on because it works so eloquently. Just trust. Just trust.
Well, Chris dropped a pretty big reveal about that, and I think people overlooked it because they were frustrated that it wasn't the answer they were looking for with Melee. But Chris talked about, effectively revealed that there's some sort of major animation system change, which I think people might just think, oh, that's a visual thing, but it goes far, far beyond visuals. Like, if you play other like more recently created action RPGs that touch on like different styles of like movement and attacking and fighting enemies, that changes the nature of melee combat a lot and combat in general. So if there's some sort of system where like we're getting a lot more dynamic movement based melee skills, then holy shit, that's a big deal. If you play a little bit of Last Epoch, it's like some of that skills in there are a bit clunky, but there's a few there that kind of touch on this, which is Blade Dancer has like dancing strikes, I think is the name of the skill, where as your character is attacking, they're moving and flowing in between different combos, and that's like pretty like a scripted sort of setup, but it gives like a little bit of taster of like just how much like an animation system can change the nature of combat. It's a really good feeling skill, super dynamic, changes the way like melee works a lot. And we talk about like, oh, knockback's really bad on strikes because you have to like hit the enemy and then you have to chase them and you have to hit them again and then they get knocked away and you have to chase them around. Well, if you like if movement is built into skills and the way that like animation's going to have a big impact on that sort of stuff is a huge deal. So I think people really like kind of didn't listen to an important announcement that was in that Q&A there.
Yeah,
it's pretty major.
Yeah, at risk of extending the podcast too far, I just have like a lot of stuff I want to talk about with PoE2. So one thing which we didn't talk about at all was the new memories, the Atlas memories, right? I think that's a pretty cool feature.
Yeah.
I like the lore angle. Like, I'm pretty interested in that stuff as well.
Wait, hang on.
It's
You
pretty
read
impactful.
lore? You don't make
No,
currency
I don't.
reading lore.
I mean, I really enjoyed Scourge League because it's like alternate Alva and like different timelines of Venarius and stuff like that. I think it's pretty cool. We're getting endgame stuff all the way up until PoE2, and like each of these are pretty impactful. Like the Uber bosses were massive for the races and all sorts of stuff like that. The Atlas Passatory. Like, first of all, what is endgame going to look like by PoE2? And then, second of all, what can they do after PoE2 comes out? Because they're already giving us tons of stuff, and they've got half the team working on PoE2. Imagine the leagues we're going to get, the content we're going to get after PoE2 comes out. Full studio power.
To backtrack a little bit to what Ziggy was saying, the animation stuff, like we've already seen it from some of the trailers and then from the first ExileCon and like playing it and stuff. There's going to be a lot more skills which are doing like multiple things at once. Like there's the whole meme of like incendiary bolt, armor piercing bolt, but seeing more like stance based and combo based skills. And I think the combo based and stance based stuff specifically for melee, I think is something will really shine. I could see a lot of stuff where it's like, God, this is a throwback. I don't know if it even still plays at this. I haven't played LOL in years, but that whole thing of like Riven with like dash overhead slam. I could see lots of things like that with the new melee system and animations of like moves that give you like little dashes, then like a big final swing. Stuff
skills that incorporate movement and
Yeah.
combinations of skills. That's the next generation for Path of Exile. That's
Yeah.
what makes PoE 2 next gen compared to PoE 1. I think that'll be like the biggest fundamental shift, and that's partly the new skill gem system, so that we can have a lot more like linked up skills and actually use them, and changing kind of skill design philosophy we're like starting to see a little bit of, but also potential animation system changes and stuff like that. Those are going to be the biggest things, I think. Hopefully they really like nail that stuff, because that's the key. That's the key thing for PvP in my mind.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's like,
I
it
mean-
sounds like it wouldn't be that big of a deal, because lots of people are like, oh, but that's just like ruthless. There's a very big difference between you attack 3 times, feels the exact same, and the third one just does more damage, and then each attack actively feels different. It's the same thing of kind of like the difference between you hit an enemy with one ability, which makes your next ability more damage, and the difference between like, I throw my javelin into this guy, and then I like pull it out of him and do another attack. I'm most excited to try around the new javelin and spear stuff. I'm really hyped for that.
Well, as much as you guys are like saying like one skill lol, but some of the most powerful builds on softcore trade in the end game are actually so button intensive that we have the meme that people have to play with foot pedals because there's just too many buttons. It's like lightning strike,
Pedal to the metal.
Banner here. It's like so I'm a little bit worried actually how many buttons we're gonna have, but geez, I think that's already a reality and we are moving towards that. And I think the way in which they'll probably balance melee, just going back to melee, is slowing the game down, because the faster the game becomes, the more powerful range it becomes, because you have to off screen and stuff like that. And we're already seeing that, like the removal of beyond, Archnemesis, all that stuff is like moving in that direction.
The Archnemesis and rare reduction might actually be a bit of a melee buff. It might feel a bit better to play builds like that when you actually can see what you're fighting.
Yeah, less likely to have like 8 different mobs doing the same thing at you at once, I think.
When you shift the priority from 8 targets to 1 target, suddenly a skill like Heavy Strike is just infinitely better, right? Because it only hits 1 target.
Well,
that was the original niche of melee builds, was like very powerful like single target damage compared to spellcaster builds, and bow builds, which are all AoE. But yeah,
I would
kind of
agree
fell by the
that-
wayside.
Yeah, 1 target Heavy Strike better, but Heavy Strike and a lot of skills like Heavy Strike, they still have terrible damage, even compared to the skills that already hit the entire screen. Like, I'm pretty sure Heavy Strike just does less damage than Lightning Strike, because Lightning Strike hits twice, right? And it hits the whole screen.
Well, not anymore, it doesn't.
Well, no,
Oh,
it
it
still
actually
does.
does.
That was
It still does.
the wrong bug.
Yeah.
Wait, what? Oh, never
It was
mind.
a triple hit.
I imagine there will be a time, probably in the next 6 months, where the outliers get executed, like Tornado Shot and Lightning Strike. And I'm fully expecting it. I've been ready for a while now.
See, it's funny you said that, because I was about to say, I think the biggest issue that ExileCon 2 will have, Path of Exile 2 will have, having played PV2 at the last ExileCon, is with all this focus they're putting into the campaign, and again, slowing things down, all this animation stuff, and a lot of that animation stuff kind of requires, like, how does that work when you have like 2000% increased attack speed and whatever, is what does that system actually look like in endgame mapping? And that's like, where is that tie-up going to happen? Are they really going to do such a massive hit in the speed of a mapping characters that you then get that slower pace? And will a lot of these new systems they're designing still function, and how do you get those to marry up? That's the main thing that I'm kind of questioning.
Well, oh, go ahead, Lance.
I was going to say, well, Grim hinted at it earlier, which is, or maybe it was Ziggy, like the Archnemesis change is trying to go towards that direction of making chunky rare that you can't just off screen. You have to stop, you have to fight this specific one thing. And I think they're probably going to just keep trying to make gradual changes like that towards making it not the most efficient play to just clear the entire screen or something like that, by adding in this thing is going to slow you down, it's going to be engaging or something, and it's rewarding or worth it. And then maybe that makes it so getting 200% movement speed and hitting the entire screen isn't the play anymore, because you can't kill the one monster that drops all the loot or something. I don't know. I could see like them moving conceptually towards that direction, maybe with each patch.
What might help in a way, funny enough, is Diablo 4, because Diablo 4 will come out for PV2 at this point, right? Was Diablo 4 end of 2023?
Middle.
Middle.
of 2023.
Yeah, so it's like
No idea.
That is one of the craziest things to me about Path of Exile. I was like, when we first started playing Path of Exile, it was like D3, lol, speed, oh my god, and now it's such the other extreme. And it seems like Diablo 4 is going to be not like a slow game, but a slower game than PoE currently. So maybe that might get people used to a slightly slower pace, so that if they then want to bring things down, not like ridiculous, just like a little bit, then people might be less reactionary to it. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting, ExileCon 2, in the context of a world where Diablo 4 exists.
Well, we probably haven't already played Diablo 4 by that point, right?
Well, yeah,
or
that's
at
what I
least
mean.
know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked for PoE once. Why not again? D3 came out. People had enough time with it that they were started. The cracks started to show. Then PoE came out and people were ramped. Maybe we do the same thing again. D4's out for a while. The shine starts to wear off. PoE 2 comes along, snatches them up.
Just play both. Why not?
Solid business model.
But like, also, is D4 actually going to be good, or is it going to turn into pay to win and it's Blizzard? And how much of what is it? Good faith does Blizzard have before it's just
good faith, Blizzard? What?
Yeah, like it doesn't have it, right? Like I don't know. I don't like personally. I don't even know if I'm going to play D4 type of thing. I don't know. It's just like it seems like a terrible company, and I cannot trust it to any level extent. It's not going to be just some pay to win, like piece of garbage, more or less. That's what I feel like it's probably going to be. I don't know. I could be wrong though.
I mean, even if it isn't pay to win, so I'm in a similar boat that I have very little faith in Blizzard as a company now. Just not just from like the way they've handled their games, also the way they've just like treated their employees and just all the horrible things they've had going on there. Even if there isn't like really atrocious monetization stuff in D4, there's been some MTX surveys that have been doing the rounds now, and it looks like they're pricing MTX at the same price as PoE, which is quite funny because obviously there's a big difference between a free-to-play game and like a $60 game. So it looks like it'll probably have a very similar monetization structure to PoE. But it's for me, it's more so like, do I trust that Diablo 4 will launch as an enjoyable game? Probably. Do I trust that it will continue to see like growth and expand over the years? That's where I'm like, because they fumbled so hard with D3 and all that other stuff. One thing I will say though about the animations, I was going to mention this earlier, but I forgot. At the last ExileCon, I was talking to one of GGG's like big art guys, and it was just after we'd had like all the D4 trailers and stuff, and he was like, I mean, to be fair, the one thing which is really fucking cool about the D4 trailer is the barbarian like multi-weapon stuff. And that's the sort of thing that with a new animation system you can do. And it's for anyone who missed it, it's the whole thing of like the barbarian's got like 8 different weapons on his back. And it's like if he's doing a cleave attack, he uses the axe. Then if he's doing another attack, he pulls out a sword, and it's really fluid. And I could see lots of stuff like that bleeding into PvE with new animation systems and new melee. And that's kind of where it's like, it's the difference between a silly little like phantasm shield flies across the screen and actually like, your character being like boom and bashing a mob with your shield, and that just feels like, oh, that feels cool, and like multi-swapping and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you get that a little bit with the shape-shifting in PoE too, which I noticed.
Shape-shifting's gonna be big.
That was pretty cool.
That'll be a really big push for melee as well, because it's not like you're gonna play like a caster werewolf.
I mean, in Last Epoch, you can play an insect, right? It's like,
they could do some like, if you think about it, this is just the bit where we like overhype everything and it's terrible in comparison, but with shape shifting and certain attacks, you could do like really cool things where it's like you shift into a bear, that particular attack, like your arm morphs out to hit things, and like, oh, that could be cool.
I could totally see shapeshifting into some sort of like a cat for a bow build or something like that, you know?
Wait,
a bow? What are you
shooting?
No, like balls? No, like you like that the kind of like the humanoid kind of cats.
We know there's werecats.
Like a Khajiit?
They've
werecat.
We know there's werecat, werewolf, werebear.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to.
You're just a cat holding a bow.
I don't know. You know, like how all the nodes of the ranger have like feline grace and all sorts of stuff like that. I don't know. It just came to mind. But yeah.
I think
He wants to
Richard will love
shift
that
into an
Ascendancy.
adorable cat boy.
Oh come on, dude. Oh, don't put me like that. I
He's up.
ain't about that. Yeah.
Playing Final Fantasy on the side, Grim.
Oh look, man. All right, it is what it is. Anyway.
But yeah,
Me
I'm
too.
just very excited to be cringe for a minute. I'm very excited to just hang out with people again. That'll be fun. I had a lot of fun hanging out with Ziggy last time. That'd be nice, you know. Go shopping again, Ziggy. That was good.
Yes, it felt like ExileCon was like one of the last things before the world kind of closed up and we all sat in our houses for multiple years, not seeing anyone. So the ExileCon announcement was hit a bit differently.
Yeah.
Because of that, I think.
Also, sorry, Amy, I'm looking forward to hanging out with you as well. I'm looking for what was very funny that it was good. So last time Noogie, it was a bit stupid, and he didn't look at where he was booking his Airbnb. So he was on like the wrong fucking island. He was like 3 hours away from Auckland or something. So he ended up crashing at my Airbnb for most of it. So there was like a good 4 or 5 days of us going like little dinner dates, which was quite fun, going to little cafes. Quite looking forward to that again. That'd be nice. I mean, I'm hoping this time he has his own place, so he's not like crashing on my sofa, but like, yeah.
It's coming back from Lost Ark. There's a few people coming back. I noticed. They're telling me, oh, is the new league good? Should I come back?
Oh,
Yeah.
They'll be back. They'll all be back. Trust.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting to see everyone come back. But yeah, that's cool. Good to hear.
So before we do our finishing, what's one build you recommend, one people you'd avoid, sort of just fun things? Is there anything that you guys would want to talk about that we've missed? Or like circle back to?
Don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay, so
Not anything my 1:35 a.m. brain can come up with.
oh no, I'm sure you can come up with something good, Ziggy. So we'll start with to make it easy for you, Ziggy. We'll start with Grim. Put Grim on the spot.
Oh,
Yeah.
lovely.
Well, it's just it doesn't need to be super detailed. You don't need to be pointing at any particular build creators, but like if people say Grim, I want just like a build that you think will work. What's one build you'd be like, give this, you'll have a fun time?
That will work.
Yeah.
Probably Helix, Spectral Helix, champion.
Oh, why would you recommend such a terribly unfun skill to play?
Well, I mean, it works, right? It's like it's
They're
got a
gonna quit
gauntlet.
before they get the maps, Grim. They're gonna quit before they get the maps.
it's OP, dude. Come on, everyone's saying
So
OP.
boring.
I mean, you can transition to lightning strike. It's got it all. Come on.
Oh yeah, you'll fun build eventually. You just need to get carried by not having fun first.
Okay, I'll give everyone some time to think about the stuff to avoid. Okay, so Lance, what's yours that you'd recommend?
Okay, I would definitely recommend Pox's Righteous Fire 100%.
Yeah.
I think Righteous Fire feels super good early on. Inquisitor makes it feel super smooth. It's tanky. It's got solid enough DPS. It's got a really nice progression. I think it's great for a league starter. What build I wouldn't recommend is
No, we're coming back to that.
okay.
We do what we recommend, then we swing back round.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's the one I'd recommend. Pox Righteous Fire.
I would say I'd recommend to people. I think Poisonous Concoction is still like super strong. It's very nice from a league start point of view because you don't need to like craft anything. You just like roll a flask, and then you have the potential to respec into loads of different things. I definitely expect to see some really cool like poison ballista builds pop up in the next few days that you could spec into. But I think as a base level, Poisonous Concoction, super safe. Do not use Alchemical Mark though. I think that is bait.
As Pathfinder. Don't play it as a cultist unless you're an experienced
player. Pathfinder. Ziggy.
I was also going to recommend Pox's Righteous Fire because the guide is fantastic. You guys done so much effort, and I was going to not recommend Righteous Firing Trickster. That's the flip side to
What the hell? Not because that's a true statement, but because he stole what I was gonna not recommend.
I knew you were gonna say it as well.
No,
as soon as you said Righteous
told
Fire
what else
Inquisitor,
to
I'm like,
say.
this dude's stealing what I'm gonna say. So I'm pretty sure we have the same recommend and don't recommend there. I mean, I think there's like a bunch of other stuff that looks like it's going to be pretty fun to play though. I encourage you to play Trickster if you've got a solid plan about it, but don't expect the Ascendancy to like carry you through that early period.
You
I will
played
say this, though.
Spark last league, right, Ziggy?
Did I? I honestly can't remember.
Okay, I thought you did. I'll just
I'm
say
a
you
terrible-
could recommend that.
I think
buried
so.
the memory.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah, yeah. I did play Spark and Quiz, I think, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
And,
That's the one I thought came out this
it was
league.
it was finally good again because I tried to play Spark like I don't know, a year back after, because I played Spark back in the day with Voltaxic and Poison double dipping and Duration double dipping. Oh, it was so good. So and then I tried to play it like a year ago and it was awful. And then I played it last league and it was really great actually.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for Archnemesis, I would have been having a ball with it. I kind of did. But yeah, I can probably recommend based on that. Then it's not like it got nerfed or anything.
All right, Grim, what would you avoid?
I'm gonna take yours. The thing I wouldn't recommend is Cleave. Despite the massive buffs, you're not gonna play Cleave. I think it's bait. Even don't listen to anyone who said anything. +2 radius, not enough.
Yeah.
He's wrong.
He's wrong. Oh.
He's just saying that because it's not very good for corrupting fever.
That's pretty true. You got me. I've been exposed.
Not every skill works with corrupting fever, Grim.
Hey, look, because think about it, guys. Think about it. Cleave, you can dual wield 2 weapons. They hit at the same time. Trinity, get like a really fat like lightning weapon, a really fat like cold weapon. Boom, big deeps. Yeah,
I'm changing my recommendation to Cleave. I've seen the light.
Yeah.
Right, Cleave, baby, let's go.
Lance, you're not allowed to say Trickster Righteous Fire. What do you avoid?
What?
Nah, that's off the table.
Why was Ziggy allowed to recommend Inquisitor Righteous Fire then? Okay, that's not fair. He has to come up
No,
with
we gave him Spark. He's doing Spark and Quiz.
Oh, okay. This is like I had time to think before the podcast for this question specifically, and now you're putting me on the spot here. What do I not recommend? I'm gonna go ahead. This is gonna be a little too broad. I do not recommend anything that isn't Trickster. All the build Trickster is the only viable Ascendancy now. Trust. You guys.
What about Juggernaut? Juggernaut though, come on, man. What the hell?
Not viable. Not Trickster, baby.
Fair enough.
So don't do what Donnie Don't does and don't play Trickster. Is that right? I'm getting that right.
You play Trickster.
Don't not play Trickster. Is that right? Okay.
Perfect.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Ziggy, if you got one ready to, because we're not counting the Trickster, and you got one ready not to recommend.
Well, wait, what?
Okay, okay, I'll go. You can think about it. I do not recommend, despite the fact the numbers look great, Lightning Conduit. I think Lightning Conduit could be really good. I've seen some really interesting Elementalist setups. I think the damage will feel great, and then you're going to see that like Archnem mob, and you're going to be like, and I think for a multi-button build as well, I'm just not sure about it. I think if you want to mess around with stuff like Lightning Conduit or Galvanic Field and stuff like that, I would say like play a Crackling Lance or like a Sparking Quiz, something which is like safe, and then you can experiment. But I wouldn't go crazy on doing the new Lightning stuff. I'm not sold on it personally.
Okay. Don't play Firestorm. Wait, and they'll buff it again.
I mean, they almost definitely will. That's fair.
Okay, so don't play Firestorm yet. Okay, hold. Don't play it soon. Wait, okay? That's the plan. Everybody hold. No playing Firestorm yet.
It's actually genius. It's gonna be the most overpowered skill by PoE2 comes out.
I know. I know it's tempting, right? I almost caved this league. I was like, oh, they reduced the delay. But hold the line.
Right up there with Cleave. Nice.
Soon we can finally play delicious Meteor Firestorm and it'll be good. But just a couple more leagues, chat. We can get that together.
I will circle back a little bit because if people question marks when I say Crackling Lance, I unironically think Crackling Lance will be like a decent build because there were people who played it last season like this is pretty good, and its main issue was its like AoE feel a bit, and they buffed that AoE on that. That's the case for like just adding radius. I think will be good, whereas Cleave is adding radius. Is like,
to start with.
yeah, it does damage, and you can like stack intensities and like.
So things kill when you actually hit them with the more AoE.
Yeah.
Isn't the problem not the max AoE, but the fact that you have to like get to that? Like you have to channel up to that. It's like similar to Flame Blast. It's not
No,
like Flame Blast
it's
has
the
AoE
opposite
problems,
because
it's
you
have to channel to it.
start with maximum AoE,
Oh,
and then it's when you
Ah,
multicast
right.
it gets smaller into like the big damage.
I've never played that skill.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So it's girthy now at the start.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good.
I'm gonna. I don't know if Mathel's put his video yet. I'm going to predict that Mathel is going to recommend Crackling Lance in his like end of league build review thing. I recommend he's going to do it. Yeah. But anyway, with that, I hope everyone has a wonderful league start, and we will all see you come actual Lake of Kalandra. And happy to announce that Brittleney will be joining us as our first guest to talk
Yay.
everything about the new league.
Awesome.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you two, I don't really do like a proper goodbye. You sort of just need to like get your bit in. You know.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Nice.
Yeah.
Outro.
Yeah.
Cut the video. Just cut the feed, man.
What do you mean? No.